We are live, ready when you are, Mayor McClure.
Thank you. I'll call this City Council meeting to order at 7 p.m. This is Monday, July 24th, and this is a meeting of the Seward City Council. Chief, would you please lead us in the pledge?
Yes, ma'am. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Mr. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Okay, roll call. Calhoun.
Here.
Barnwell.
Here.
Wells.
Here.
DeMoss.
Here.
Finch is excused. Osenga.
Here.
And Mayor McClure.
Here.
Okay, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Now we're to citizen comments on any subject except those items scheduled for public hearing, and we have a couple of those. You'll have 3 minutes to speak, and we'll start with the people that signed in, and there's a 36-minute total, so if we haven't reached that, then I'll take, by a show of hands, others to speak. So, Mr. Clerk, do we have the list, and who's the first one?
Okay, I'll let you know here very shortly.
Okay.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, first on the list is Skip Ryerson.
And the routine, as we probably know, is we need your name and if you're inside or outside the city limits with your residence. Thank you.
Skip Ryerson, inside city limits. Good evening, council and administration. About a year ago, we started discussions regarding the city's interest in selling our electric utility. I testified several times before and after council reviewed and received the presentations by Chugach and Homer Electric and selected HEA in executive sessions. I asked our city to consider using this opportunity as a means of bringing our community more closely together from miles 0 to 20, as we are all customers of the utility, even though only in-town voters could vote on this sale. When I considered the role of council, the role council would play last year, and the impact on our citizens for decades to come, I was actually thinking council would be taking more of a governance approach, which I believe is part of your mission, and afford the taxpayers an opportunity to have all interested solicitors make their presentations in public. Then, after a few work sessions to explain both offers in extreme detail, council would likely have received sufficient feedback from the public on which offer they would have preferred. But the opportunity was deprived, and possibly as a result of poor advice by administration or outside advisors, that resulted in council deciding Seward's fate in executive session. Having talked with many of the citizens before and after the election, the two things that I heard the most, and that may have been a factor in the election outcome, were one, why were we not allowed to see the presentations before council decided? And two, why did council select HEA over Chugach when Chugach rates were far lower than HEA? My comments tonight have nothing to do with HEA or Chugach. It's about what we would like from our city government and to have our voices heard. So I respectfully request that council table resolutions 2023-088 and 089 indefinitely and start over by developing a new plan as to whether to sell our electric utility that involves having the presentations made in public and including all ratepayers from miles 0 to 20, and look at a timeline that calls for a similar special election again next May. Further, regarding the moving of the goalposts from 60% voter approval to a simple majority, I feel strongly that the sale of significant city assets should continue to have a strong 60% voter approval. And last, I request this tabling of resolutions purely out of respect to the ad hoc committee that you just appointed and give them an opportunity to complete their mission that you have assigned to them and report back to council and the community. There is no rush, yet we rushed into the first election, so let's not make the same mistake again, and remember, the electric utility belongs to all ratepayers and taxpayers from miles 0 to 20. Thank you.
Thank you. Good timing. Mr. Clerk, who's next?
Kevin Dunham.
Kevin?
Madam Mayor and Council, thanks for allowing this. I'd also like to speak on the same thing and...
Excuse me, Kevin, we need to have your name and
Oh,
insider
okay,
on
Kevin
the- for the
Dunham, I live
record.
at Primrose, so I'm outside the city limits.
Thank you.
But I am a ratepayer, and I have 43 years in with the power companies, Chugach Electric, Golden Valley Electric, Homer Electric, and Matanuska Electric. There's just no way that you should have picked Homer over Chugach without telling us why you did it. Chugach, I worked for them for 22 years. They're a great company. They own the power lines that come to this area. No matter what, Homer has to pay them to send power to Seward, a wheeling charge. That's going to be tacked on. They have the lowest rates. Chugach owns part of the gas field. They are so large that they can get a cheaper gas price than Homer ever will, and both of them use gas for 90% of their power. There's just no way that you should have done what you did. Now, you need to let the people know what the rates are out in the open, not in executive session. And that's really all I really have to say, that you should let us have all the story. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Who's next?
Bruce Jaffa.
Bruce?
Bruce Jaffa, outside city limits. Under Mayor, Council, I speak to removing Resolution 2023-088 and 089 from the current consideration. 088 proposes a change of 3/5 vote to a lower standard. It is an attempt to change the rules that govern our community. The goal would allow something that's already been rejected according to the rules. If you don't get your way with the rules in place, well, no problem, change the rules is what it seems to be. Does that make sense? It's like a kid, I'll take my ball and go home. Supermajorities originated in Roman times and are currently found in small towns and large governments across the country. This policy is designed to counter the natural ebb and flow of public opinions. The U.S. Constitution requires 3/5 majorities for treaties, impeachments, declaration of war, etc. For state governments, Mason's Manual requires higher majorities for vetoes, constitutional changes, tax changes, and more. The Founding Fathers, Adams, Hamilton, Madison, and in the handout that you have the references to their exact quotes, all spoke of the importance of supermajorities. Significant changes to procedures, structure, or assets should require a larger majority, as our current rules do. This resolution is clearly a major change. It's also unnecessary. There is no emergency that needs to be solved. For 20 years, some have promoted the sale of our electric utility. They have not convinced the supermajority that there is an imminent need to sell. I'm not speaking directly against the sale. I think it could be presented in a way to the public that they would accept it. I think there are reasons to look at it. Your ad hoc committee had zero administration, council, or utility managers that attended the first meeting. You appointed that ad hoc committee to get information. It seems like it was just a fake effort. The utility is not in crisis. If a manager comes and goes, there's replacements. I talked to the previous interim manager today, Corey Bargeson. He filled in for the previous manager, John Fouts. The utility was not in crisis then. It's not in crisis now. If everything were to change tomorrow, there'd still be a way to carry on. No doubt there's a positive revenue stream for the Seward operation. There's millions of dollars held in account as a result. A lot of money's been spent in other ways that could have been spent for maintenance rather than deferred maintenance. And just like your own home, deferred maintenance is the most expensive maintenance. There's no savings there. Open positions for departing managers, city manager, they're all in flux. They're all in turmoil. This is not a change. This is not a time to promote these issues. The perfect reason for supermajorities to protect from random or ill-conceived ideas. That's paraphrased. And I may not stay for the meeting because I had to get stuck in the road closure last time. I was out till midnight, so.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk?
Daryl Schaefermeyer.
Daryl Schaefermeyer, inside the city limits. I thank you for this opportunity. You need to start the clock there, Mr. Clerk. I'm here to support what the previous speakers tonight have said in this public comment period on the topic that I wish to comment on tonight, and that is the two resolutions that you have on your possible agenda before you, if you set your agenda to keep them on there. I ask that you not, I ask that please be polled for the reasons that have been stated before me. There is no crisis that drives this, particularly to change the charter that's been part of this community fabric and governance for many, many years. And it served the community well. It will continue to serve the community well. You should really, really, really think very seriously anytime you look at changing the charter. That's really been developed over the years and works well. So I ask that you not do that tonight. I don't see the emergency that necessitates bringing this same question back on the ballot. I think you really do need to look at revisiting this whole thing again if you wish, but why he didn't look at Chugach there's no way that Homer could ever provide the same service that Chugach will provide this community. If you really think it's necessary that we sell our utility, which I don't agree with, I don't think is necessary. I don't think there's an emergency that necessitates that. It contributes substantially to the fabric of this community. It helps support our costs of government, and you really need to think about that. The agreement that I think you ended up with Homer Electric was flawed. I couldn't find anywhere in there where they're in the agreement that they committed to keeping the standby plant. I asked that question. Nobody could show me where that was. They promised a 2-year freeze in rates, but immediately that got changed. We got to have a rate study, and then we will adopt those rates. That's not the deal that they presented to this council when they proposed, and it just was a flawed. They took away any revenues from any future cruise ship connection. That went away. It was not the same proposal, and quite candidly, Chugach provided the better proposal. You allowed Homer Electric to change their proposal to basically meet what Chugach had proposed. Anyway, my time's up. I ask that you take this and not put it on the agenda tonight, and I appreciate you giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk?
Cheryl Cease.
I might be stuck right here.
Cheryl Cease, inside the city limits, and I'd like to thank the mayor and the city council for letting us speak tonight. I have talked now to mayor and also the public works, and maybe I should have talked to them besides the police all this time. I am having a real hairy fit over people parking in the Jeep trail. This is an emergency trail. And if somebody was hurt up there, that's the only way they can get up there. And it says no parking, and people park there. Oh, they can get around me. Yeah, when you get the other day there was 3 cars in there. No way could anybody hardly walk around them, let alone drive a vehicle up there. And so this last 2 weeks, I probably made, I don't know, 5 or 10 calls to the police department. They come out. I'm not sure if they get a ticket or what they do. Years ago, when I was fighting it all these years ago, we had a city manager that was going to put signs up for us, no parking. Finally, we thought about it for a long time, and he says, I'll put them up. And instead of saying no parking on the Jeep trail, it's no parking this way. So now they can't park on the street. And so we talked about that, and they took one sign down and then put the little sign back up on the other side, but one still is going the other way. And when they first put that up, they even put stuff on the gate saying that not to block the gate, but they could park next to it, big deal. Well, I'm really upset about it, and the other night we even had somebody in a tent there camping with their car there. And how I even heard it in the middle of the night was I heard this animal give this cry and I thought I looked out the window because I wanted to make sure it wasn't a neighbor's dog or whatever. And here they were sitting in that tent with a light on. It must have been their dog. Of course, I called the police station and they came out and talked to them. No idea, but they did move. And, but now tonight I did talk to the Public Works Doug, and he said he will get with me and we'll do something. But we have to have better signage. That's all I could say. People says, well, maybe we don't want to park on the street. Well, everybody else parks on the street. You can see parking cars. They're going to climb that big mountain. Why do you have to be right there to climb it? I mean, they're lazy. They don't like it when I call the police. Thank you, and I hope we get this settled.
Thank you.
Oh, there's one other quick thing. The campers that are the motorhomes that are parking on the streets, why can't we do something about them? They're on the side streets and they're still there. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk.
Christiana Smith.
Good evening. My name is Christiana Smith, and I reside outside Seward city limits. Tonight, I am requesting that Resolution 2023-083 be removed from the consent agenda for further discussion and development. The Children in the Workplace policy number 2023-06, leaves room for interpretation as written that may leave employees feeling treated unfairly. What constitutes as occasionally or a brief visit. What one supervisor sees as occasional or brief may not be seen the same by another. The policy states that supervisors are responsible for enforcing the policy. What are the actions if a supervisor does not of a particular department? There is a city, borough, state, and nationwide lack of child care issue. This has opened up conversations on the effect of this on the economy, which has led to conversations around family-friendly workplace policies. This is an opportunity for the city to have their own discussion about developing family-friendly workplace policies. We have resources here in Seward through HYPER to offer knowledgeable input as part of that discussion. Thread Alaska has a resource page on their website for suggestions on how to support employees through family-friendly workplace policies. Thread Alaska and the Alaska Chamber have partnered together and are currently conducting an Alaska employer survey regarding employer child care issues. This is not unique to the City of Seward employer issue. Instead of being reactive and restrictive, this is an opportunity to be innovative and a leader in creating a positive family-friendly workplace culture.
Thank you. Who's next?
Carol Griswold.
I feel like I'm in a pit down here. Carol Griswold, inside city limits. Dear Mayor, Council, Administration, and Public. I was surprised to read on page 211 that the Comprehensive Plan and Strategic Plan support amending the city charter in order to sell our electric utility with a simple majority vote. Volume 1, Section 3714 supports upgrade and expand utilities. The only reference to utilities that I could find in the current 1999 strategic plan is to expand utilities throughout SMIC. There is no section 13.3 in the strategic plan. There is nothing supporting the amendment of the city charter to more easily sell this valuable public asset. The same irrelevant, inaccurate, comprehensive, and strategic plan consistency information was cited on page 216 to justify placing the proposition to sell our utility to HEA on the ballot for the regular election in October. The May vote was indeed close, but that does not necessarily mean that the majority of voters are still in favor of the sale. Since the May election, a lot more information about our utility, its value, and its future has become available, increasing concerns and doubts about the sale to HEA. Questions remain unanswered about the option of selling to Chugach Electric, which has consistently offered lower rates, has a larger customer base to spread costs, and has a longer contract with the natural gas provider. The ad hoc committee has just started meeting to research the costs and options to rebuild and upgrade our electric utility. Let them finish their work. There is no rush. Changing the city charter in order to increase the chances to get to yes, and repeatedly putting the same proposition on the ballot, hoping for a different outcome, are not strategies worthy of the council. Slow down, get the facts, be transparent. If the sale then proves to be in the best interest of the city and its residents, it won't need a simple majority to pass. Please vote no to both resolutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Mr. Clerk.
Laura Schneider.
Good evening, Laura Schneider, Inside City Limits. And I am also here to request that you remove resolutions 2023-088 and 089 from the agenda. I voted yes. I found myself disappointed with the results. And yet I also found myself disappointed with the process. I met with HEA. I liked a lot of the things they had to say. I didn't think the deal was all bad, but I did think that the communication to the community came too late and too little, and people didn't understand. And I do think that if that had been different, that the result might have been different. And I don't think that changing the city charter is the answer to that problem. Additionally, I don't think bringing the same question back to the voters again at this election is going to yield a different result. In fact, I would be tempted to vote no, because there's nothing different, nothing has changed. I also think that you owe it to the volunteers who are giving their time to this ad hoc committee to answer the questions that they were formed to answer. And so if the vote does come back, I hope that it's after a revised RFP with more specific questions that help us as citizens to get the best deal that we absolutely can if we're going to sell our utility. And then I would hope to again be able to vote yes for a deal like that. Since I have a little bit of time left, I have one other thing. I would like to request that you remove Action Memorandum 2023-010 from the consent agenda, because I would love to hear more about this. I see that the memorandum was from the city manager, and I would love to hear from the clerk's office or whoever has input on this, because to me, when I read that they're looking at changing the election date to our city and borough elections to the same date as national elections, that might actually increase voter turnout. And yet in the memorandum, in the packet, it says that we're against anything that would decrease voter turnout or cost the city more money. So I'm just not understanding how the same date would cost us more money or reduce voter turnout. So I'd love to hear more about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk.
Casey Warner.
Hello, Casey Warner, Inside City Limits. We all wear many hats in our community, and I am here as a private citizen. I'm here to request that council consider removing Resolution 2023-083, Children in the Workplace Policy. When I first became a parent, I was concerned on how I was going to juggle my work life and this new being in my household. I was fortunate enough to where I was able to find an employer that was willing to work with my schedule, with the childcare I was able to piece together. And even at times in emergency situations, I did bring my child with me to work. I have been fortunate enough to continue to find employers in our community that are willing to work with me and my childcare needs. I feel that the resolution as it stands now leaves a lot to be desired. I believe this gives the city and our community an opportunity to be a leader and a forward thinker in the way that we continue to operate as a business and as an employer. So please consider taking Resolution 2023-083 off the consent agenda.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk?
She was the last person signed in.
Oh, okay, so we've got time. Does anyone else wish to speak? I'll get Linda first and then you, Becky, okay? Her hand came up first.
Linda Paquette, outside city limits. Thank you, council, for this opportunity to speak with you. So regarding the resolution changing the requirement from a 60-40 majority to 50+1, let's think about the numbers for a minute. Typically on a city-only election, you have around 300 to 350 people that vote. And so if you have a 50-50 split, you've got maybe 150 people plus one deciding what's going to happen to 3,000 ratepayers. I don't think that's, I mean, I even think at a 60-40, when you only have 300 people or 400 people voting, when you're impacting 3,000 ratepayers, I don't think that's a good split either. But I really don't think dropping it to 50+1 is the right way to go about it. So, and in terms of changing, I'm jumping around a little, but in terms of changing the deadline for the ballot and making the vote be in November, I actually think that's an improvement, because I think it gives people one day, and the feds are talking about making it a national holiday. So I think there's great value in changing the actual date that you would go to vote on any of these issues. But back to the sale, I think you're really overlooking one big piece, which would be very helpful. And I think you could do it even by just putting a mailer in your utility bills. But could you please poll the entire rate base? It doesn't seem right that the majority of the people who have been making the millions of dollars that go into the electric fund don't even have a voice. So solving that problem seems more appropriate to me than changing it to a 50+1. And then I am a member of that wonderful ad hoc committee, and the report from our first meeting is on page 309 in your packet, and in the agenda it doesn't say discuss, so I'm really, really hoping that it's a discussion and you don't just go, oh, there it is, and on to the next thing. Thank you so much, and I have not quite 30 seconds left. I would like to suggest that just this chair, all the others are fine, but if this chair could have a shorter back so people in the back could see over it, and then maybe not be so, I don't know, so low.
Maybe we'll work on that. Becky, did you want to? And then we'll get anyone else who wants to.
Becky Dunn, inside the city limits. The question the one item on the agenda that the Borough Assembly put forth to postpone the vote from October to November, they're going to put something else on the agenda. What they're going to do is exactly what you guys have decided to do with the ad hoc committee for the utilities. They're going to appoint, or at least Cox is proposing that they have a committee to research and study how we can increase the voting. So I think that this is being pulled by the next meeting anyway, but I'm not 100% sure. But the intent was on increasing the voting because people are busy in the summer. And right now people are busy in the summer. So only 3 people were in the audience with the ad hoc committee, and that's an awesome committee, a great group of people. There's like 3 or 4 electrical engineers in the group, but there were only 3 people in the audience, and I was one. And I found out at the last minute that the microphones were not going to be on, that it was not going to be on the city YouTube, and therefore would make it very difficult for me to put it on air. So we strapped with duct tape a cell phone to a tripod and recorded it. And both wolves with our station are volunteer EMTs and firemen, so it took us till late Saturday to get it downloaded on our YouTube channel. If anybody wants to watch it, it's capital S-A-K Town, Sacktown, on YouTube, and it's the last video downloaded. But even though we've had our great sunny days, it got 90 views already with those two days. And I think that people knowing how to vote, I'm thinking we should pull both those resolutions. That I agree with everybody else, what everybody else said, actually. Pull those 2 resolutions, give this ad hoc committee time to answer all their questions. This first meeting was basically just appointing a chair and going over their mission statement and just feeling, introducing each other. So we did miss the first 15 minutes of the meeting because Wolf was toned out. And off the subject, I did not follow my thing here. So to recap on how you can watch those meetings, you can show up in person, or Linda Paquette will be airing them live on Facebook, and I will be doing them live on YouTube or downloading it later, and they will be on 91.7. And so please give them a chance to get answers to some of the questions. I think that people didn't know how to vote last time.
Okay, thank you. We have about 6 more minutes. Who else wants to come up? And then I'll get you to. That might be the 6 minutes.
Yeah, I'll try not to take 6 minutes. I'm Randy Stauffer. I'm outside the city limits. I'm also a member of the Ad Hoc Utility Committee. We had our first meeting last week, but it was, and at least speaking for myself, it was disconcerting to me to have that meeting and find out during that meeting that there were resolutions being presented to the council or by the council for, to vote on tonight, that the decision about selling the utility seems to already have been made, and who to sell it to had already been made. Now, I know our committee was not supposed to be looking at the decisions to make whether or not to sell the utility and who to sell it to, but what we were charged with and our mission statement is very important information, and I think it was very, very confusing to myself and to other committee members as to exactly what are we doing if the information that we were supposed to be providing is very necessary in order to make the decision about whether or not to sell the utility and who to sell it to, or not to sell it at all. And that decision has already been made, then what exactly are we doing with our time? I agree with our co-chairman that'll give a report a little bit later this evening. I hope that's a discussion that we can talk a little bit about some of these issues, because at the moment I think the members or several members of the committee are pretty confused about exactly why the ad hoc committee was formed, and are we really an ad hoc committee, or are we a post facto committee, a committee that's formed after the fact to sort of legitimize what a decision that's already been made. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Good evening, I'm Shannon Thorne, inside city limits, and I do work for the city of Seward. I wanted to speak to Resolution 2023 on the 083 for the children in the workplace. We are a public city government. We deal with the public. We don't have a lot of room in our offices. They're very open. We deal with a lot of irate people in different places, the harbor, the utility counter, community development, and I really don't think children should be around that. We have private meetings with people. It'd be really hard, what do you do with a child when you have a private meeting? What I would like to see is for the city to figure out if we can have a city of Seward daycare for our employees, or help with people that want to have a private daycare, get through the system to get the licensing, to have the inspections. I think that is a much better alternative because we are a government. We're not a private owned company where we're basically talking on the phone or working from home. We have to be here, and we have to deal with things that children should not be around. And that's all I wanted to say. And I have grandchildren that are here this month, and I have had childcare issues. I had a plan, and it fell through. And my supervisors were awesome to work with. They let me change my schedule so that I could continue to work and take care of my kids. So, thank you.
Thank you. Well, that pretty much is our 36 minutes. Hope everybody got a chance, looks like. Okay, lots of good input. Moving on to the approval of the agenda and the consent agenda, and I would ask for a motion and a second, please.
I'll move to approve the agenda and the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Are there any changes? This would be things removed from the consent agenda. Councilmember Wells.
I'd like to remove Resolution 2023-083 for discussion.
Okay. That will be placed under new business, number 3, correct?
Number 10.
Yes, 10, yes, under number 10, right. But the third one down. Councilmember DeMoss, did you have your hand up?
I would like to remove action memoranda 2023-010.
Okay, and that will go under action memoranda under number 10. Any other changes? Okay, seeing none, we're ready to vote. Mr. Clerk?
Okay, voting on the approval of tonight's agenda and consent agenda. Osenga?
Yes.
Calhoun?
Yes.
Wells?
Yes.
Barnwell?
Yes.
DeMoss?
Yes.
And Mayor McClure?
Yes.
Okay, your agenda and consent agenda have been approved, and that includes the following items. Approval of the June 12th, 2023 City Council meeting minutes, the June 26th, 2023 City Council meeting minutes, the July 10th, 2023 City Council meeting minutes, Resolution 2023-082, authorizing the city manager to purchase from Bellier Company one 1200 amp Siemens circuit breaker for installation in the Spring Creek substation in a not to exceed amount of $101,041. Resolution 2023-084, authorizing the matching funds in the amount of $15,424 towards the city share of funding for the Scheffler Creek Flood Mitigation Project and appropriating funds. Resolution 2023-085, authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with AK Tree Service for the purpose of clearing transmission line corridors as assigned by the city's electric utility in an amount not to exceed $350,000. Action Memorandum 2023-009, authorizing the city manager to approve a services agreement with Kelly Connect for the provision of Xerox services and to reappoint Bruce Jaffa to the Port and Commerce Advisory Board, PACCAB, with the term set to expire in July 2026. There is no objection to the renewal of liquor license 5400, the Cookery, and no objection to the renewal of liquor license 5974, the Mermaid Grotto Cafe.
Okay, thank you. So those two items that were removed, we'll hear when they come up later. We're now at the city manager report. You can find that on page 5 of the packet.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You have my report there. I just want to talk about the alert that happened the other day about the tsunami. So the borough was here, and they actually were working on the sirens on July 10th. So if you noticed that our sirens did not go off that night, and everybody's phone went off. So people's phones that were in Fairbanks, the Valley, their phones went off also. That was from the National Weather Service. We had a meeting with the borough, and we were talking about this, about how down in the States they can, like for tornadoes, they can narrow the area of alert. So we talked about that. And then Mayor McChickey emphasized that. He was on the call also. So it wasn't, the police department did an outstanding job with the thousands of calls they got that night. Thanks for the staff that he had and stuff like that. But they did give the all clear to everybody because of the phones that went off. So there was no, if you looked online at the tsunami.com, .gov, sorry. And anyways, if you looked on that, you could see that the wave was not going to come this direction. But the phones messed everything up. So, and Alan, I don't know if you want to touch on something there on the alert also. He was on the call also. If I could.
Yeah, please, please.
Alan Nickel, outside city limits and chief of police. Basically, what I wanted to address tonight is some habits that are forming in the community, and we really need to get ahead of these things. So this is more, this is kind of addressed at everyone. My first point with this is that when the sirens go off, it's time to act immediately. At the start of this event, like Norm said, our phones went off. And most of us, I think, are used to the overhead speakers going off, but both are valid. And so we need to pay attention to those things when they go off. A lot of people evacuated like they're supposed to, and a whole lot of people did not. When I came into work, to start up the EOC functions and that sort of thing, I went into dispatch first. That's, I'm going to head straight to the brain center and see what's going on. And what I found was just every single phone line that we have lit up with people asking basically the same 3 questions. Number 1, is this real? Number 2, what do I do? Where do I go? And number 3, should I evacuate? And the problem with this is when the sirens go off, it's too late. It's too late to call us and ask us what you should do. It's too late, to get online. You need to take action immediately. And I'm sure that the people that were here in the 1964 quake would tell you, evacuate. So that's number 1. Number 2, in this event, we had to deal with a situation at the hospital. And the problem here is the hospital is not an evacuation site. There's this old misconception in the town that the hospital is a shelter and that it's a location that you should head to. It is not, and I can't stress that enough. The current shelter is the high school, and I'm going to add to that the Avtech gym, but currently our inundation zone is 100 feet instead of 50, which is right outside this window. So the Avtech gym is not in that. So let's look at it as something that we'll go to after the fact if we need it, but in the meantime, people should be getting up higher than that. Just as a hint for everyone, pretty much everyone has a smartphone nowadays. If you have an Apple iPhone, there's a compass app on your phone. It comes with the phone. All you got to do is open that up, and it will tell you what elevation that you're at. And if you have an Android phone, you can do the exact same thing. There's also a compass app on it, but you're going to have to play with your settings. You've got to go into the settings and find where it's at, but it will also display what your altitude is. So I encourage people to use those things. But remember, stay away from the hospital. The hospital's job is to treat wounded and take care of people. And if we have an event like this, they can't do their job if they're overcrowded with evacuees. So that's real important. So, and then my last point here is my number one concern is that the Seward community is falling into a boy who cried wolf scenario. And I think we all get it. When these things happen and they're false alarms for Seward, it's frustrating. But in 1964, I would remind people that 13 people lost their lives in the 64 quake and tsunami. These things are very real. It's probably a miracle those numbers weren't higher in 64, and I would be willing to bet that the population here was far less than what it is today. I wasn't around then, so I don't know, but that's my guess. So I would tell everybody, feel free to be mad, feel free to be frustrated, be glad, whatever, but be alive to have those feelings after this event. So evacuate when the alarms go off. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
That's it, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Okay.
Take any questions.
I just want...
Stephen actually has.
Yeah, Assistant City Manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So on page 9, second bullet point is talking about the city council retreat. This is something we talked about at the last meeting, but we're hoping for some feedback and discussion with council. We had originally proposed November 18th. We want to find a date that works for everybody on council. We need to wait until after the October election and hopefully stay away from November 11th because that doesn't work for the Sea Life Center, and November 25th, which is the Saturday right after Thanksgiving. So possible dates would be maybe November 4th, December 12th, or December 9th, or other dates.
No, December 2nd, you mean?
I'm sorry, yes. Yeah, 11/4, 12/2, or 12/9.
Okay, Councilmember Wells.
Won't some of the council members and administration be gone on November 4th? When do we come back from Toby Hero?
October 31st.
We come back on the 31st?
That's, well,
yeah.
That's what we
Okay.
just were told.
So I'm available then on the 4th or December 2nd.
Okay, I am also. Is there an advantage either way to do it the 4th or the, how about December 2nd? You're not going fishing or anything.
Not just be getting back.
We don't have Council Member Finch here, but I would guess he might be around then. So shall we try for December?
12/2?
Yes,
Okay.
December 2nd.
Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember DeMoss.
Yeah, going back to what Chief Nickel just reported on, I really appreciate that rundown and all of that info, but my concern is that not very many people are gonna hear that, and I'm hoping that we can get like a refresher info out, like from the police department on Facebook or to the community through Facebook, most likely, I'm assuming is probably the best way on everything you just said.
Go ahead, yeah.
So basically, everything that I just read is going to go up on Facebook.
Perfect.
I have this is my.
Awesome. Thank you.
It's going up.
I was just going to say, Daryl made eye contact during this, and we were here. And the reason we left town had nothing, at least in my remembrance, to do with, there was no sirens, nothing. We just had this massive, this was in 1964, I mean. And we left town because all the fuel oil tanks down there were burning, and we thought that the town was going to burn down, and that's why we went out. And as we went out, the waves were washing across the lagoon. So, you know, sometimes it's just obvious you got to go. So, you know, anyway. But yeah, it's one of my things, trying to get better notification and people educated. And so. Any other questions for the city manager or assistant? Yes, Councilmember Calhoun.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. No, just one comment I wanted to tell our finance department that I appreciated the upgraded, updated finance report and the additional information that were being provided. on some of the projects and funds, and it's very helpful to see some of those numbers that way. So thank you very much. And I think as we move forward, and it gets better, just helps us make better decisions on where we're at. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay, I'll move along. We don't have anything in the packet, but City Clerk, do you have did you?
Oh, sorry, no.
Okay. Did you have anything?
So I don't have a clerk's report in this section of the packet. It's basically the Obihiro update
Right.
that we'll come to later.
Later, okay. And our city attorney is here. Did you have anything to report tonight, or are you just being here? Because there's no written report. And if you do, come on up and you can report.
Well, I may as well take a minute of your time.
Sure.
And come down here. We usually give the formal monthly report in the first meeting of the month, not this meeting. So I think Sam kind of brought you up to date at your last meeting. And the only thing that's really happened of any significance, legally speaking, since then is we did receive, right about the time of the last meeting, a favorable decision from an arbitrator that was dealing with an employee grievance. And so I don't usually get into the details of those things. There's some confidentiality concerns, but I do want, we don't try to keep secret that, there's grievances or, there's issues in the workplace that we deal with as a city attorney, even though we only speak about them in general terms. But just because those arise and we report them doesn't really reflect that there's some disease within the city or some underlying significant ongoing problem with employees. A lot of people work for the city of Seward, and not all of them are happy all the time. And so things do come up, and this is one that just happened to resolve itself between last meeting and this meeting. And it was able to be done without even a hearing, which meant that it took a little bit less of staff time and our time to address. That's all I have, but if you have any questions on anything at all, here I am.
There he is. Councilmember Wells, you had your hand up first.
Yes, thank you. So, I believe it was 3 meetings ago that I asked you multiple questions regarding the utility sale and why it was handled the way it was handled. And I believe that there's some citizens out there, some who are here today, who didn't hear your responses. And so I would like you to reiterate, if you will. So, for example, citizens are stating that they didn't have an opportunity to hear the proposals from both Chugiak and HEA. And I had asked you why that was, and you had stated, if I'm correct, at least one, if not both of the bidders requested it to be done privately. Is that correct?
Well, that's my recollection, is that they were submitted thinking that they would be held in confidence.
And so...
But that's my recollection.
Yeah, go ahead.
And so I would like to make this extremely clear one more time, that the city council did as advised when it came to the sale of the utility. Again, we keep hearing about backdoor deals and all that type of stuff. But like I just, our city attorney just stated, that was per the request of one, if not both, of the bidders. Secondly, was there an opportunity for Chugiak to counterbid? And if so, did they take that opportunity?
Well, I didn't deal directly with them, but I'm quite sure that it was reported to me by Mr. Montgomery that everyone was given the opportunity to make their what's called the last best offer. And HEA changed their original offer and Chugiak did not. So I do want to stress one point, which I did make the last time, and I think it's important for council and the public to know that whether something is proper to be held in executive session is, a legal question. But whether you actually go into executive session to consider something that can be properly heard in executive session is a decision of this body. That's why you make a motion to go into executive session, because it is possible to make a motion to go into executive session, to hear something that's entirely proper to be heard in executive session, and vote not to go into executive session for whatever the reason may be. So I believe I said that the last time, and I just want people to understand that that is how the system, works here. So.
Thank you.
Other questions for the city attorney? Okay, I see none. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Okay, we have no other reports and no ordinance to introduce, so this is going to bring us over to public hearings. Does anyone need a break before we begin? Okay, we'll continue for a bit and I'll ask that again. So this will bring us to public hearings. During public hearings, when it's time that the public can comment, you're limited to 5 minutes per person. And after all have spoken, a person may speak a second time for no more than 1 minute. If that happens, we have two. The first is a resolution 2023-086. Mr. Clerk, would you please read that into the record?
Yes, and I'd like to just make a note here that there was a numbering error on this agenda. And this resolution is, in fact, 2023-080. That's how it was originally noticed.
Thank you. But the resolution at this time is 86 and on the copy of the resolution, right? Thank you. I meant to. Okay.
Oh, so just to clarify though, but for the history books, this will go down as resolution 080. Is that okay, or did you want to stick with 86?
What I'll be signing is 86, according to what we have in our packet. So I'm not sure. It was advertised as 80, that was an error, right?
Well, the 86 was the error.
Okay. But the resolution that we are discussing and the paperwork of it is on there is 86. So is that going to be confusing if in the history books it's called 80 if I've signed 86?
No, that'll be fine to proceed with it as 86, but there will never be a resolution 080 on legislative history. It'll just skip over those two numbers.
I think that's probably the better way to keep it as 86 because otherwise we should change the printed copy, I think.
Okay.
That's all right.
So
okay,
we'll
now if you want to read it.
Okay, Resolution 2023-086, authorizing the city manager to enter into a lease with Duchess LLC for Lot 5, Block 6, 4th of July Creek Subdivision, Seward Marine Industrial Center, Seward Recording District, 3rd Judicial District, State of Alaska.
Okay, and you can find this on page 118 of the packet. I'd need a motion to approve and a second, please.
I'll move for the approval of Resolution 2023-086.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Administration.
Yes, Madam Mayor. So Duchess LLC has been coming to SMIC for several years now. She brings like 3 to 4 large vessels, and she noticed that some of the land has been expanding at SMIC, and she was looking at a piece to bring some to purchase or to lease, so she could put her vessels on it and maybe build a facility to house other things, maybe some other businesses. And so she looked at that. She wanted a lot more, but then she reduced the size to what we have here tonight. And she's been great for us. She's been totally cooperative of everything. And even when she brings a vessel, she cleans up her yard and she moves back, goes back in the water, comes back and forth all the time. So my request that you approve this. So.
Okay, thank you. Anything else to add, Stephen? Okay, I'll open the public hearing for Resolution 2023-086. Mr. Clerk, has anyone signed in?
Nobody has signed in.
Okay, is there anyone that would like to speak? Come on up.
Laura Schneider, Inside City Limits, and just real briefly, the owner of Duchess LLC, Christiana Smith, was my very first fishing captain. She's been a boss and a friend, and she's a great person. And since she's not here to speak for herself, I just wanted to speak to her character. She is a businesswoman who loves Seward. She's actually the first person who told me that Seward was her favorite place in Alaska and made me want to come here and visit when I was fishing out of Valdez. So I just wanted to give you that perspective. She has been doing business here for a long time, and she's also the person involved with the kelp plants out in the bay and doing the kind of helping with kelp research, and so she's put down roots in the Seward community, and I am really excited to see her join this community.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this particular resolution? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to council. Any comments or questions? I'm not seeing any. Are we ready to vote? I'm seeing nods. Mr. Clerk, I think we're ready to vote.
Okay, voting on the approval of Resolution 2023-086. Osenga?
Yes.
Calhoun?
Yes.
Barnwell?
Yes.
DeMoss?
Yes.
Wells?
Yes.
And Mayor McClure?
Yes.
Okay, that resolution has been approved.
Okay, and our second public hearing is on Resolution 2023-087. And when you're ready, Mr. Clerk, could you read that into the record?
Okay, Resolution 2023-087, authorizing the maintenance and operating agreement with JAG Alaska for an additional 5-year period for the shiplift and dry dock area.
Okay, thank you, and that's on page 154 of the packet, if anyone's following along. I need a motion and a second to approve this.
I'll move for the approval of Resolution 2023-087.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Administration, you want to speak to this?
Yes, Madam Mayor, this has been a long process with the attorney, myself, and with JAG. They've come to, the attorney's been working together, and this maintenance operating agreement has to be done every 5 years. So just maintaining the synchro lift, which they still get inspected every August, is coming up here. So we agreed on everything. We removed some items that didn't need to be in there anymore. And Mr. Jakowski signed it, so we're ready to go forward.
Okay, anything else to add?
I don't have anything.
Okay, I'll open the public hearing on Resolution 2023-087. Mr. Clerk, has anyone signed in?
There's nobody signed in.
Okay, is there anyone out there that wants to speak? Come on up.
Good evening, Bruce Jaffa, outside city limits. I think it's really important to credit JAG with the effort and success that they have had at 4th of July. Those of us that were here when that project was spudded, or the whole facility was spudded, had the hopes that a ship repair facility would anchor a major economic force. The Jagelskis have brought that stability and growth. I think you have heard from many of them at different times. I'm a little surprised that they're not here to speak for themselves, but as chair of PACAB and working with the harbor master, we've seen and reviewed a lot of their activities. They are forward-thinking. They have a tremendous employment. Full disclosure, our company has done a little bit of work, but not enough to have swayed my opinion. I feel comfortable that you will pass this resolution, but I think they deserve more than just a passed resolution. They really deserve a tip of the hat.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wanting to speak? Come on up.
Cheryl Schaefer-Meyer, Inside the City. I too would like to express my appreciation and support for JAG and what they have done to this community, for this community, with respect to the Marine Industrial Center and the shipyard facility. When they first came to Seward, I think I was still on PACAB, and I said, you know, do the right thing for the community and you'll be successful, and they have done. And I hope we will. I certainly support this. continuation agreement tonight. I was kind of on the ground floor of development of that facility over there, doing the initial work for the land selections, to all of the process of doing SMIC, to all the way through. They negotiated a contract with NEI Synchro Lift for purchase of the Synchro Lift and the 300-ton or the 250-ton initially travel lift, all of that history. And it's been my privilege to be a part of that, and I'm grateful for the success that it's showing. Just as a side note, the electric fund we've talked about, that enterprise fund, helped make that facility possible. It did provide the support, the financial support to keep the center, Marine Industrial Center, moving forward until the money could be arranged to enclose the basin and do where it's made it possible to succeed today, as seen by the agreement that just was before us here with Duchess LLC. And I'm grateful to see that. I've lived long enough to see it come to fruition, to see it prosper, to see it, where it is today, and to see where it can be, still grow. And I hope you will support JAG. And I can't say enough of thanks to them for doing what they have done.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wants to speak to this? I have that same problem.
Here comes my man. He's known to get me out of the chair.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak to this public hearing? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to council. Councilmember Wells.
I just have one question for administration. On the second paragraph down, it says, in order for the lease to continue operation of the sewer dry dock, it's an agreement every 5 years. The maintenance and operation agreement needs to be approved prior to July 23rd, 2023, which I'm sure you're going to tell me why we're voting on it today.
So we were talking about having a special meeting, but we can go to a month-to-month. Sorry, Madam Mayor.
That's
okay. So we can go to month-to-month, and I was explaining to them, we've been working on this since January, trying to get it completed, and there was a dry spell in there. I'm not sure why, but we've been emphasizing this needs to be done, and he was going to be in default. He's actually in default one day, but we can, he did not do a boat lift today, so the synchro lift's not being used. So that's where we're at with it, but hope you approve this tonight, and that he won't be in default.
Good catch. Any other comments, questions? Councilmember DeMoss.
Well, I'll just comment that obviously I'm going to support it, and they've done amazing things over there, and just obviously very happy to be doing this again.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Ready to vote? Mr. Clerk, I think we're ready to vote.
Okay, voting on the approval of Resolution 2023-087. Wells.
Yes.
DeMoss.
Yes.
Barnwell.
Yes.
Calhoun.
Yes.
Osenga.
Yes.
And Mayor McClure.
Yes.
Okay, that resolution has been approved.
Okay, thank you. We have next an ordinance for enactment under unfinished business. And it's ordinance 2023-015. We also have a substitute for this, but first, Mr. Clerk, do you want to read in the original?
Ordinance 2023-015, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Seward, Alaska, amending Seward City Code Title VI, purchasing contracts and professional services for the City of Seward recodification project. This ordinance had its initial public hearing on June 12th, 2023.
Okay, so this, the original is on page 191, and there is a laydown of a substitute. We don't need a motion on the original, but what I would like to do is move to adopt the substitute. And it is the substitute ordinance 2023-015, and I'd need a second for that.
I'll second.
So it's been moved and seconded for the substitute. The title is slightly different. Do you want to read that title that's on the substitute, Mr. Clerk, and then I'll ask administration to speak to it? If you've got it there.
Okay, this is the title of the substitute ordinance 2023-015. An ordinance of the Seward City Council amending Seward City Code Title VI Purchasing, Contracts, and Professional Services.
Okay, just wanted that for the record. Administration, do you want to talk about this?
Yes, Madam Mayor. So instead of you doing amending this, amending that, we come up with just the substitute ordinance. That way there, everything's in one thing, it can go in. And I know that there were some errors that were found, and finance was working with the city attorney. They got everything straightened out. We got it done so we can get it back to you at this meeting. And if you have some questions about the ordinance, the finance director is here. The acting finance director is here to answer any questions.
Okay, are there any questions? I think this is a nice way to do it because there were a lot of amendments, and so it's nice and clean. Any questions at all or comments? We're ready to vote on this? I'm seeing nods. Okay, are we ready to vote? Okay, Mr. Clerk, I think we are.
Okay. Voting on the enactment of ordinance 2023-015, the substitute ordinance.
You got it. You said substitute.
Okay.
Yeah, he did.
Wells.
Yes.
Osenga.
Yes.
DeMoss.
Yes.
Barnwell.
Yes.
Calhoun.
Yes.
And Mayor McClure.
Yes.
Okay, the substitute ordinance 2023-015 has been enacted.
Okay, at this point, I want to ask, do we need a 5-minute break? And I'm seeing some nods. So before we get into the further resolutions and stuff, let's take a 5-minute break.
And we are live.
All right, thank you. We're back from our 5.5-minute break, and we're moving along to new business. And our first new business is Resolution 2023-088. This is not a public hearing. Mr. Clerk, would you please read this?
Resolution 2023-088, submitting the question of amending Seward City Charter, Chapter 13.4, disposal of municipal utility plants and utility property at a regular election in and for the City of Seward on October 3rd, 2023.
Okay, thank you, and this is on page 210 of the packet. I need a motion to approve in a second, please.
I'll move for the approval of Resolution 2023-088.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Administration.
Yes, Madam Mayor, so we had a meeting several meetings back and discussed this item, and then you asked us to bring something before you for this, and this is, working with the city attorney, we brought this back for you to decide.
Okay. So, council, yes, Councilmember Wells.
Yeah, well, I would like to ask administration to explain a little bit more in detail. By making this change, is it just for this one process, this one vote, or is this changing the charter as a whole?
It's just changing the charter.
Okay, completely.
Completely.
Did you have a follow-up on that?
Yes.
It felt like it.
Absolutely, thank you. So to administration, I ended up doing a bunch of research on supermajorities, majority voting, and some citizens have made some comments as far as it going back to Rome, which it went back to 100 AD, was the first time that it was brought and used. And it has been used in a lot of non-capitalistic countries. And it's been used a lot in corporate affairs for board members. However, I could not find where it was used a lot regarding cities selling assets. And so I'm requesting that you explain, is this a common practice or not?
So Madam Mayor, I'm probably going to ask the city attorney to come up there and answer, if he could answer that question.
If you have answers to
If you have it, the answer.
Or you can come all the way up here to say you don't, I guess.
Yeah, just so it's clear on the record. In the communities I represent, which is more than a dozen of them, quite a few are sort of the size of Seward. I'm not aware of a community that uses a supermajority to authorize the sale of a utility. Not all those communities have charters, though. So under Title 29, if you're what's called a general law municipality, there is not a provision in state law that would require a supermajority vote for disposing of an asset of the city if the council decided to put it out to a popular vote. There is precedent for supermajorities in Anchorage with regard to raising taxes. And they use 16% there as well, I believe. And they have used I guess what you would call a tax-specific workaround on one or two occasions where they include language that dilutes the supermajority together with a tax proposal. I think one was on the marijuana tax. So that's, I don't have and once I get outside Alaska, I don't have occasion to look into things like this very much, how they do it in other states, so I don't have any information for you.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Councilmember Wells.
Okay. So I guess my follow-up would be, again, with the research that I did regarding the supermajority, is I found that it was very common in corporate experience, removing board members and that type of thing. But I couldn't find, as our attorney just stated, where communities of our size maintain a supermajority to sell an asset. So I guess my question to the attorney before he walked away was, if we pass this resolution to put it on a ballot, are we not, then we're not making a decision, we're giving that decision back to the community for them to reevaluate, if I'm correct. I guess I don't need the attorney to tell me that, but is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
That's it? Okay. Councilmember Calhoun.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. And just to kind of follow up with that, I believe also, based on information that we've looked up and looked for, we don't have anything else in our charter that requires to dispose of a city-owned property other than this, that takes a super majority like that. Is that, we looked for that and
That's correct.
we didn't find anything else that requires that.
There are provisions in code that require, as an example, initiating a special improvement district, like we talked about recently for Forest Acres. So there are instances in code that require greater than the 4-vote majority, but there's nothing in the charter to answer your question.
I just keep pondering myself. I don't even think Daryl's old enough to have been here when that was put in, right? I mean, you can't answer. But what year was our charter developed? I mean, it was different times. It was a long time ago, but they had to have a reason for requiring that. You don't just throw something in like that, and that being the only thing. And so, obviously, the people who put this in the charter back in the old days valued the utility and the decisions the people made about it pretty strongly, or they wouldn't have put that in there. Also, these two resolutions going on at the same time, there was a reason when we discussed it, and it sounded good to me at the time, but it doesn't sounding as good anymore. I'm going to vote against this particular resolution. I think that there had to be a reason to keep that 60%, and we've heard from a lot of citizens, so that's my opinion. Everybody else can chime in. Vice Mayor.
I do think, thank you, Madam Mayor, by the way. I can understand maybe, since I don't know exactly how long ago this was put in our charter, or when our charter was written. So,
He looked it up, it looks like 1980...
1984.
1984.
I was like, wow.
Oh, that's not that long ago.
That's not that long ago. Okay, thank you. I don't know the reasoning. I wasn't part of this then, but I do think that presenting it or approving this and giving it to the citizens of Seward to vote on, I think is, I don't think that's a bad thing. So I will vote for this, just give it out there and say, if you don't want to do it, then don't vote for it. If you do, then vote for it. We're not deciding that, we're just giving it to you and asking a question. That's all we're doing. So I will vote for this.
Councilmember Barnwell.
I'm kind of leaning against voting for it, mainly because just listening to the feedback in the community of people that are invested in this. We came within 6 votes of passing this, and yet we feel there's a strong voice out there saying we're moving too fast, and maybe that's why there's a 3/5, sorry, is it 3/5? It's 60% rule, because you want an overwhelming decision. A decision is this big, you need an overwhelming amount of the people, not just 50+1, making that decision.
Okay, other comments? Councilmember Calhoun.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And we have heard a number of people here tonight, voicing displeasure with this being here now, wanting us to pull these. I will tell you that I have also heard from many more people than that, when are we going to do this again? And why does it take that threshold for us to do this? Because, and I know I've said this before, and I apologize for boring people, 23 years ago, there was an advisory vote taken, and almost 53% of the people that voted to continue the process. And the council at that time decided not to. Now we're at a 58, almost 58.5%, which is almost 19% higher than the people that voted no. And if you, in any other form, and I understand what the charter says, but in any other form, that is a landslide. That was, as was pointed out to me a little while ago, that was a Ronald Reagan landslide in 1984, where he won 49 states. And it was 58 and change. So I'm going to support this resolution, and that's what I have to say right now.
Anyone else? Ready to vote? Okay, Mr. Clerk, I believe we're ready to vote on Resolution 2023-088.
Okay, voting on the approval of Resolution 2023-088. Calhoun.
Yes.
Barnwell.
No.
DeMoss.
Yes.
Osenga.
Yes.
Wells.
Yes.
And Mayor McClure.
No.
Okay, that resolution has passed, has been approved.
Next, we have Resolution 2023-089. And when you're ready, Mr. Clerk, could you please read that?
Resolution 2023-089, submitting the question of selling the City of Seward electric utility to the qualified City of Seward voters at a regular election in and for the City of Seward on October 3rd, 2023.
Okay, and you can find that on page 215 of the packet. Administration.
Yes, Madam Mayor. So like we had several meetings about this, about possibility of bringing it back. We checked with the city attorney and everything's perfectly legal to bring this back to the voters. You just have to decide whether to, what's wrong?
Yeah, I didn't have a motion in a second.
Oh.
I knew, there's always something that falls through the cracks. Could I have a motion in a
So
second,
I will
please, to
move
approve?
to approve Resolution 2023-089.
I'll second.
Okay, now.
Okay, Madam Mayor, like I said, we had this conversation a while back, and you requested that we bring something back before you to bring this back to the voters, and it's in the form and presented it to this evening.
Okay, thank you. Discussion. Councilmember Wells.
Thank you. So, I've heard from both sides saying that we're bringing it back too fast, and saying that the people have already voted, and that we are trying to skirt the vote. But also, I've heard countless times things such as we should have, the citizens should have been able to see and hear both proposals. And the reason why I asked the attorney tonight to restate that is so that everybody listening and everybody in this room knows that we did everything that we were guided and instructed to do, 100%. Per the request of the bidders, we had executive session. Did we have to do that? You know, we were trying to work well with both bidders. Again, both bidders had an opportunity to counter bid. One did, one didn't. They had the opportunity to do so and they didn't do it. What they did do, the ones who didn't win the contract, was issue information, disinformation during the election. And hence the reason why I am for bringing this back again, because I do understand the fact that, and we all said this during the process, we wish we could have got the information out sooner. We wish we could have got the information out sooner. We got the information out as soon as we were allowed to get it out. We couldn't talk about the bid process, we couldn't talk about what the bids entailed, and we couldn't talk about why they won, and we couldn't talk about the winning bid until it was agreed upon and signed. None of that was allowed to be talked about. And in my opinion, I wish we could have had more time for everybody to ask more questions, but we went about it exactly the way we were guided. Council did not request any executive sessions, whether regarding HEA or CHUGAC presentations. That was their request. Finally, we knew that the rates were going to go up with CHUGAC. Of course, when they were talking to citizens, they didn't tell them that. And everybody here now knows, because it's in the news, that the government is forcing them to do a rate study, and they have already said, yes, the rates were going to go up, which we knew, but we couldn't, and we said it to folks, but we couldn't get facts from them because they were holding back. So that's another reason to bring it back, because now the voters know, oh, guess what? The rates are going up no matter what. So I think it's another reason for us to revisit it. And finally, the reason why I'm going to vote for this is we followed the process that we were given and guided by through the city attorney, and I believe we were all disappointed that we couldn't get the information out sooner. We all have that information now. It's extreme public knowledge, and hence the reason why I'm going to vote to bring it back for another vote. And that's it. Thank you.
Who else? Councilmember Barlow.
I want to point out to the ad hoc committee that this group has not made a decision yet. That's what the decision we're making tonight. One, we're discussing whether or not to even bring that up as a vote, and if we did, that goes back to the voters. It's not our decision; it's the voters' decision. I just want to point that out. Having said that, I really want to see. I don't think it's enough time. We have, what, 2 months or so until this election, a little over. I don't think the ad hoc committee can do what it really needs to do in that small amount of time. And I really want to see what this ad hoc committee, there's just too many lingering questions for me. It's such a big decision and there are so many moving parts for this. I just don't feel confident that I have all the information I need to make that decision at this point. So I'm leaning against bringing this back to a vote until we as a council and we as a community have more information. Like I think some of the citizens said today, that I feel like we may be rushing into this and I don't understand. I get why we think we need to rush into this, but I think maybe taking our time, really getting more information might be good for all of us. So.
Thank you. Okay, Councilmember Wells.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask administration the reason why we are put on this timeline. If I understand correctly, HEA has agreed to extend their offer through October, but after that, the offer's gone. And if we were to try to resell, we would have to start all over again. The other, as far as the ad hoc committee goes, we knew when we set up the ad hoc committee, right, that has to be done no matter what the voters vote, right? So if the voters vote to sell it, fine. If they vote not to sell it, fine. The ad hoc committee still needs to be done because we need to outline if we don't sell this utility, what all is it going to take? Well, some folks say, well, then what? Let's wait and let 100% till the ad hoc committee is done. And I don't mind if that's what we're going to do, but every one of us agreed to sell the utility, and that was the best thing just a while ago with the information that we had. So if we table this now, fine. I'm absolutely fine with that. But I don't see how we won't be back at this discussion in months from now, especially with the lack of employees that we are about to come up against and the amount of infrastructure that we have to do with no director.
Is that a hand? Councilmember
Sure,
Calhoun.
that's fine. Yeah, probably no surprise that I'm going to support this. Again, it will still be a vote of the people of Seward. And, the information that we have is enough information. There will be more before October, so it will add to that. And, I don't know that it was ever, at least in my mind, an emergency as much as it is where we want to be in 10 or 15 or 20 or 30 years. Where we would be today had this happened in 2000. How much further ahead we would be. So this is definitely something that I will support putting back on the ballot. I don't think it's too quick. That a lot is based on my own personal opinion, obviously, but also the opinion of a lot of people that have talked to me outside of this chamber about this very subject. A lot of people that live inside the city and a lot of people that live outside the city. So I have no trepidation about putting this back on the ballot, and I'm going to definitely vote yes to support doing it.
Okay. Anyone else? I was going to propose an amendment or a motion to postpone this until May, but I have a feeling that would fail, so I don't even think I'll bother. I'm torn. Since we're putting the previous resolution on the ballot, it seems almost reasonable to put the other one on the ballot, even though it goes against my better judgment, so I'm torn. Any other comments? We can vote. Oh, Councilmember DeVos.
Well, I'm torn as well, and I've listened to a lot of people, and, as all of us have been working really, really hard on just educating ourselves on this, and I could go back and forth 50 times in a day on this thing. On both resolutions, I came in here thinking for sure I was going to vote no on the charter change, and I think that, at least for me, when I'm this torn about something and don't know the right answer, I feel more comfortable just giving it to everybody else. So I guess that's why I would support putting this on the ballot again as well. I believe that what the ad hoc committee comes up with is going to be really important, and I'm looking forward to getting that information, but it was never meant to be to focus on, it was just so completely different than, aside from the sale. So it was meant to be, we need to take care of what we have regardless of what may happen in the future. So I was hoping that the ad hoc committee could get a lot of work done in a short amount of time, I know, and get more information out to the public, because it seemed that the public was, who really needed more information on this. We were getting bombarded. We had all the information at our fingertips for whatever we needed and lots of conversations. But, so I don't know if that timing is going to line up, and maybe that isn't fair to you guys, but I want you to know that I think it's a great group of people, and I'm looking forward to getting the information, and I don't know if this is going to pass it or not again. So I hope that you all stick with it. I think I'm going to vote yes for this. That's where I'm at.
Thank you for bringing that up. We're going to be looking at your minutes or your notes from the ad hoc committee later, and we'll speak a bit to the direction that we expect, but it was never expected that this ad hoc committee would be a should we sell the utility committee. This was the other channel. We were going, in fact, it was Councilmember DeMoss's suggestion, I believe, to go down a couple routes, because if it doesn't sell, or if the vote is not to sell, we still have our utility, and that's the purpose of this committee, to figure out how best we can start rebuilding or whatever. So we'll talk that later, but Councilmember Calhoun?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Also, I know we'll discuss it later. If a vote comes around to sell the utility, that sale is not going to close for quite a while. And so we're still going to need the ad hoc information, because we're still going to have to manage and move forward with that utility as long as it's still under our control.
Thank you for that. I should have said that. Okay. Councilmember Wells.
I just want to state, how you said that you were going to make a proposal, but you didn't think it would go. I am not against postponing this until May at all. But we just have to end up then starting the entire process all over again, and in the meantime, we have a utility that's falling apart. And just because the previous directors or whomever said it's not falling apart, well, they're not here. They're not here to speak, and they don't hold that position any longer. So I can't take anything they have to say into account. Only person I can take into account is our current director, who I've been working with now for 2 years, and I trust their judgment.
Thank you. Councilmember Barnwell, your hand was up.
Yeah, I just would take issue with whether or not our electric utility is falling apart. And no offense to Director Montgomery, but I think part of the whole thing, the ad hoc, was to have a group that was more objective and that could verify and back up Mr. Montgomery's experience with the utility. So I just can't make the assumption that it's falling apart at this point. And that's why I'm not in a rush to sell, because no one's just, it hasn't been proven to me that it's falling apart. And in fact, I would say that it's still an asset for the city, and it hasn't been proven to me solidly enough that it's falling apart. And that's why I think we need people that really know more about this stuff than this group about this topic. So that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Vice Mayor Osenga.
I agree with everything that's being said up here, but I will support this. I thought everything that I learned the last time this came around, everything that I've learned since then, I thought it was a good idea then, and I still think it's a good idea now. I still support the idea of putting this on the ballot. It's up to the voters. I don't have a problem giving it to them again. I will be supporting this.
Anything else before we go? Councilmember Thomas.
So does it have to be, how does this work with only 6 of us? I'm sorry.
We still need 4 votes.
Okay. Yeah.
If I may
Yes.
ask a question, I just foresee a lot of questions coming my way about the election with both of these items on the ballot at the same time. If the decision to sell ends up being like a 58%, but then this change to the charter passes at the same time, does that failing grade become a passing grade instantaneously?
That was, we should ask the attorney about this, right? I think that question has been asked and answered, but that's a really valid question.
Yes, this is the way the resolutions are written. They're effective immediately with the approval of the voters. So the voters would have approved lowering the threshold. If they do, then that lower threshold applies to the other question on the ballot at the same time, which is selling the utility.
Okay, thank you. I thought that was...
Now, there's different, they could vote to keep the 60%, and then in that case, that's the requirement that the second question of selling the utility has to meet.
Right. Right. Does that clarify it for you?
Thank you.
And for everyone. I think that's an important thing. Anything else? Councilmember Wells.
My last question, I guess, or maybe statement. I understand, and Director Montgomery, if you may correct me if I'm wrong. I understand that we have started the Seward rate study, and when we had talked about having administration bring this bring this back in front of the public, it was because we knew that Seward was going to be having a rate study and that it would be done before October. We knew that Chugach was going to have to do their rate study and tell all the users how much their rates were going to be going up, and we knew that was going to be done before October. We knew that we were going to have the ad hoc committee put together a lot of information for us, and as much information as we could have before October. So the final reason why I support having this vote again is because those are 3 pieces of information that the voters didn't have at the May vote.
Okay, anything else before we vote? Ready? Okay, Mr. Clerk, we are ready to vote.
Okay, voting on the approval of Resolution 2023-089. Calhoun.
Yes.
Wells.
Yes.
Barnwell.
No.
DeMoss.
Yes.
Osenga,
Yes.
and Mayor McClure.
No.
Okay, that resolution has passed and it has been approved.
Okay. Next, we have from the consent agenda, moved over Resolution 2023-083. Correct? Mr. Clerk, could you please read that?
Resolution 2023-083, adopting Personnel Policy 2023-06, Children in the Workplace.
Okay, thank you. Who took this off? Oh, but first, I guess I should have administration speak to this, and then I'll...
Oh, did we get a motion and a
Oh, a
second?
motion, yeah, I'm yeah. How about a motion and a second, please, to approve?
I'll move to approve, is it 2023-083?
Yes.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Okay, moved in the second, administration.
Yes, Madam Mayor, so the HR Director's here to talk about this, and we've been working, this was started when the last city manager was here, and it's been going back and forth, so.
Okay, Tammy.
All right, thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. This policy has been a very difficult one. I understand the need for daycare services in our community, and I would love nothing more than to tell our current and any new employee that the city has an on-site daycare, but unfortunately we do not. Our employees who are injured at work are covered by workers' compensation. The employees' children are not. This also creates a productivity issue. We have received several complaints from the public and employees regarding children being in the workplace. Complaints such as crying babies and children running around the offices being unsupervised. The employees did not want to say anything to their coworkers as they sympathize with the lack of daycare services in Seward. However, as professionals working for the public, our employees have a job to do, which often includes meetings with the public. Children in the workplace can distract our staff and others from completing their various duties. For those employees whose positions allow them to work from home, department heads can approve such a schedule as necessary. If the employee's position does not have work they can do from home, the employee can work with their supervisor to alter their schedule or take annual leave. To be consistent and respectful to all employees, this policy must be the same for all departments. We understand these issues will come up, and we want to work with our employees in the best way possible. I have reached out to a few other cities to see what they do. Kenai, City of Kenai, the employees do not bring their children to work. However, they stated if they did start to have an issue with this, they would add a policy to their handbook, only allowing brief visits that did not cause a disruption. Homer, they have no policy, employees are not allowed to bring their children to work. Soldotna, no policy, employees are not allowed to bring their children to work. And because I worked for the City of Unalaska, I reached out to them as well. They are working on a policy right now for safety and distraction issues, or due to safety and distraction issues. But as of now, children are not allowed on a regular basis. And that's what I have for you right now.
Okay, thank you. So, you were the one that pulled it off,
Yeah.
Councilmember Wells.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I brought it back so the council could discuss this. I think it's, I mean, we've heard from our citizens, and I've heard from city employees, and I've heard from other citizens, and I thought instead of it being on the consent agenda that we should take some time and discuss it in front of the public. I too understand the need for childcare. We all know that we've seen some money put towards that program, and we hope one day that that money will be used for a daycare, but it hasn't happened yet. But I've also heard from people saying, I share an office. So currently, a child is anyone under the age of 18, from what I read. Interrupt me if I'm wrong, please. So does that mean that my 17-year-old has been sent home from school for whatever reason, and so I'm going to bring him to my office for the next week? Or does that mean my 4-year-old, or does it mean only babies? And if I'm sharing an office with somebody, that can be a huge distraction for both employees. I can only imagine. And I think that because, as HR has stated, many of our neighboring communities have a policy of no children, we are not going to be the lone wolf in this situation. So that's why I wanted to bring it forward, or take it off consent. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Demas.
I appreciate all of your comments. Tammy, thank you. And also I appreciate Shannon Thorne for speaking. I know that's probably hard just as an employee from the city to come forward and say what you're, and so I appreciate that because, I like having that insight from that perspective. And it is a sensitive topic, and I don't have children, so it's even more sensitive for me to talk about because I don't want to seem insensitive. But I do feel like it would be a distraction in the workplace, and I understand that it's a struggle. I would love to see the city and maybe Hyper work together to use that money that Hyper was given to have a city daycare potentially, and maybe even open up if there is more space for other folks in town. I don't know if that's a crazy idea. It's one idea that I would support, and I don't think that I can support this because I don't think it's forward thinking for us to be the ones to do it. I think it would be forward thinking for us to solve a problem, maybe have, a daycare on site or something. Not, I just feel like this is, unfortunately, I do think it's the route to go, and I think that I'll be voting for it.
Okay. Any other comments? Well, I have a little anecdote about distractions. So I was a single mom, and I was a chemistry professor, and I'd be lecturing to 300 or 400 people and engineering students, chemistry. And there were occasions when my son couldn't get to school. And so I would bring him, and he would write on the whiteboard beneath me, and he would do little pictures. And, it was probably great for my engineering students because they hated what I was doing anyway. But that was a distraction. The university did not have a policy, and I was able to bring him, and it was really great, but that's a whole different thing than being in a small office for a whole day. These were hour-long lectures, and so I think we didn't have a policy before, but we need to have one because things perhaps got out of hand, and so this seems reasonable. If it needs to be modified in the future, I'm sure that modifications can happen, and I would love to see some of that Hyper money go to researching how we could possibly have some kind of childcare for city and maybe other related employees. So let's start talking about that in the future. Any other comments? Are we ready to vote? Okay, Mr. Clerk, we're ready on this one.
Okay, voting on the approval of Resolution 2023-083. Barnwell.
No.
Demas.
Yes.
Osenga.
Yes.
Wells.
Yes.
Calhoun.
Yes.
And Mayor McClure.
Yes.
Okay, that resolution is passed and approved.
Okay. And the other item that was taken off the consent agenda was Action Memorandum 2023-010. Mr. Clerk, would you please read that into the...
Action Memoranda 2023-010, opposing Kenai Peninsula Borough Resolution 2023-048 regarding the change in election date.
Okay, thank you. And you can find that on page 104 of the packet. And I guess I still need a motion and a second for Action Memoranda, right, Vice Mayor? So could I get a motion to approve in a second, please?
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution
10.
Sorry, I lied. 2023-010.
A second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Administration, do you want to speak to it, or do you want me to speak to it?
Madam Mayor, if you want to, but we're going to ask the clerk to, see what he's going to also have to entail, what he's going to have to do.
Oh, sure.
Yes, so, but Stephen would like to speak first.
So I'll pass the baton to the clerk in just a moment. From administration's perspective, the KPB resolution 2023-048 has a few what I would call fatal flaws. The first being that If you look at the second whereas on page 107, it states, and I'll start in the middle of the whereas, an ordinance could be introduced to provide the borough's regular election. So even if this passes, even if the KPB resolution passes, it's not binding. And then secondly, in section 1, we can read that this is an advisory vote. So in theory, Kenai Peninsula voters could approve this and the borough could take no action. So administration's recommendation would be that advisory votes in general are not a good idea. And I'll turn it over to Clerk Peck to talk about the reasons that this would actually be harmful.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. So this came up rather quickly, and the other clerks around the Kenai Peninsula Borough were pretty alarmed about it, and so they sent me some information, and it sounded like if this passes and the election date is changed to November, we have to either follow suit or buy our own election equipment to do our own October election. And then it sounded like there was an issue with competing with the state for the same election officials. And I haven't talked to our local crew yet, but I know that they're few in number and they're hard to find. And if we had to have 2 separate crews in here, that would be a challenge.
Thank you. And I'll just speak briefly. I was the one that brought this up because I was contacted by Johnny Blankenship, who was the borough clerk, now the clerk of Soldotna. This affects all the cities. And it sounds good on the outside to, if you put them all together, you get better voter turnout. There's flaws in that. And the ones that the clerk pointed out, the fact that we now we use borough equipment for ours, and now we would have to purchase equipment. We probably don't have enough people to man the things. Also, it's been brought out that if we go with the state and then the federal elections, those are partisan elections, and local elections are not partisan, and that might change things too. That was just a side comment someone made. So, but I should ask Councilmember DeMoss, you brought it off the...
Because Laura Schneider, thank you for speaking tonight, asked for further explanations.
Thank you. Well, those are the reasons, okay? And I think that there was Homer does it quite elaborately, but we received a copy of Homer's letter opposing this, and it was massive, but similar. And I think all the cities are basically, the cities that are affected, which is all of the 5 cities, are opposed to it. So it was postponed so that this next meeting, which is August 1st, I think, whatever, this is timely anyway. This will get to them before the meeting where they discuss the vote. So, anything else about this? Okay, then, Mr. Clerk, I think we're ready to vote on the approval of this.
Okay, voting on the approval of Action Memorandum 2023-0110. Osenga?
Yes.
Calhoun?
Yes.
Wells?
Yes.
Barnwell?
Yes.
DeMoss?
Yes.
And Mayor McClure?
Yes.
Okay, that action memo has been approved.
Okay, and then we'll be sending that to the borough. Okay. Other new business. Number 1, discuss public works facility bond, and this is on page 220 of the packet. This is a discussion. We don't need a motion. We need to discuss. So, administration, what do you have on this?
So Madam Mayor, we got some information from the bond bank, what it would cost, what it would have, the mill rate would have to go up, and the mill rate would have to go up significantly. It would go up 7.37 mils. So that's quite a jump for people's property taxes.
It would go up.
Up 7.3.
Additional.
Up to 7.37. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay.
Up to
You hear that,
7.37.
yeah.
Yeah, sorry. So that's a lot. So that's why we decided to have this discussion to see before we can, if you do decide to bring this and put it on the ballot, then we can do a special meeting to bring this back so we can make the time frame for the election.
Okay, and the bringing on the ballot would be a bond measure.
A bond measure, correct.
On the ballot, so. Mr. Soul, did you have?
Oh, I was just going to state, so we have We have up until August 11th, so tonight is the last regularly scheduled meeting, but if council decides that you want it placed on the ballot, then we could do a special meeting. Administration's recommendation would be to continue with the design and engineering. No matter what, we're not gonna get done with the design of the new facility until at the end of February, perhaps the beginning of March, so our recommendation would be to continue through to 100% design, and then in the meantime, place this on our 2024 legislative priorities and continue to seek external funding. We definitely don't want to put it on the ballot when we don't think that it would get voter approval, and frankly, we don't think that placing that much of a burden on the property tax owners. So if we bonded the full $21 million project, that would be an increase of $353 per $100,000 in property value. So that's a significant property tax burden on the Seward community. We want to get this project done, but we also want to do it in a way that's not going to have that much of a negative impact on taxpayers in our community, especially as we're concurrently talking about, a large increase in people's utility bills. The cost of living in coastal Alaska is not getting any cheaper. So we'd like to continue on with design and get approval from council to wait to bring this to the voters.
And what's been done up to this point and the further, that would still be we just hang on to that. Probably the projected amount will go up, the cost over the years?
That's a good point. So we believe that the 21 million and change that we provided to council at the last meeting during the project update is the worst case scenario. The project contingency is going to continue to decrease, but we won't have that dollar amount before the vote.
And then one more thing, Madam Mayor. So the thing, I know they're working with Doug to try to reduce some of the items in the thing to get the price down some more, and that will come with as the design moves forward. So.
Councilmember DeMose.
Well, did we decide that was the only way we were going to pay for it, was through a property tax increase?
There are other mechanisms, but a GO bond would be an increase in the property tax.
Go ahead.
What are we going to do with the money that we get from the lots that we sell? Because that's going to be like $1.5 million probably. I mean, it's not close to it.
Correct. So I think when we discussed that was going to go into the capital acquisition, but also maybe for the.
But again, that's going to be after the new facilities built.
After the new facilities built.
Would there be a sunset, or can you do that? Like once the bond is paid, does the mill rate go back down?
The bond is paid.
I don't know.
Why are we still paying for it, for the property taxes?
I mean, you could come back before council to drop the mill rate down when the bonds are paid off. But how many years was the bond? 25 years.
We won't be allowed to.
Okay, that's all I got.
Okay, other comments on that morbid subject? Would we do a motion to, how do you want this, or just a recommendation? It's not
a motion.
We should vote?
We only need a motion if you wanted to bring it back soon. But if not, we postpone and just continue on with the design. And then we can bring something back and give you updates where we're at, and then we can bring it back before you at that time.
Okay, is there any disagreement with that? Let's start with that. No disagreement? So you have pretty much unanimous decision? Okay, that should go on the record? Okay. So next, only two more things. Discuss the current plans and updates for the Alhegro Exchange, page 307, and I believe Mr. Barnwell, Councilmember Barnwell is on point. If I can find page 307.
This will be pretty quick, but remember the three components to this thing. It's the Alhegro students that are actually coming here next Saturday, I think. Next Friday or Saturday, coming up quick. We also have, by the way, that's 4 students and 1 adult. I think they're all girls. They're staying at my house, Marilyn and I's house, 2 of them, and then the other 2 are in Kreitz, and then we flip-flop middle of the week, and the adult stays in the hotel that the Japanese contingent pays for. That trip total for those students is probably going to be less than $1,000. We're really trying to cut costs on this thing. The Overhero adult visit is October 25th through September 1st, 10 to 11 people, probably 11. That cost will be in the range of, I think, around $1,500 to $2,000. I think they're doing all kinds of stuff, fishing, hiking. They're going to be at the city council meeting.
When did you say they're coming? I think your date's wrong.
The adult visit?
Yeah.
I think.
They're supposed to be here August 28th.
25th.
25th.
Well,
is the
oh,
first.
did you say August?
I said.
I'm sorry, I misread.
Yeah, August 25th.
Okay,
is the
you're right then.
first.
I just misread.
Yeah, and thanks to Councilmember Wells' generosity, they have 2 groups. There's 2 parts to that group. There's the dignitaries from the city, and then there's citizens that are traveling. And I think the citizens are staying with Mr. Wells. And then the other group is staying at Edgewater. Then we have the Seward adults going to Overhero, 23rd to the 31st, although that date is a little bit flexible. We don't know exactly, because I think that Japan's waffling a little bit because of the chrysanthemum, did I say that right? Festival?
Chrysanthemum.
So they're waffling a little bit. In terms of people that are going for sure, Councilmember Wells, myself, Assistant City Clerk Jody Kurtz, looks like, City Manager Kat Sorensen, and Chamber Rep Karen Cooper. And I want to point out that Karen Cooper is kind of taking the lead on helping to organize this, as well as obviously Mr. Peck and Karen Corrigan. So there's been a lot of people working on this, but it's really nice to have Karen Cooper really taking the lead. They're just really good at organizing in the chamber, and that's going to be a great. That'll be a great visit. And then, a couple of things. We're going to invite 5 people from the public to join us, and we are putting that out. If it's not out there, it's going to be out there really quick. But one thing I need to get from the council is, do we want them to be only city residents that go to Overhero?
Wow.
Yeah, I know.
How's it been? How did we do it before? Does anybody remember?
So, Madam Mayor, there was some people that traveled before that lived outside of city limits. I think, actually, Mr. West was one because he spoke Japanese, which was...
Oh, yeah.
So...
Right. So it's been done that way.
Yes.
And they pay for it.
Correct.
Yeah, the citizens are going to be required to pay.
Everything's pretty much paid for in Japan, but they have to pay for their
travel,
flight, and incidentals. Okay.
So, is there? Are we okay with in or out of the city limits, or should we? Councilmember Wells.
I can't imagine anybody who doesn't participate in this community wanting to go. So everybody who participates in this community should have the right to go, especially if they're footing their own bill. So it doesn't matter to me where they live.
They'd be representing Seward.
They're going to be representing Seward.
Right.
Okay, any objection to that? Okay, looks like that's...
And then finally, budget. Ms. Corrigan pointed out that the budget we were looking at, the money, the pot of money that we were looking at was really spoken for through all kinds of travel from the council and the city. So we're going to have to come back to the council at some point and give you a final total. But we are really trying to cut corners on this. I kind of think total costs are somewhere between $15,000 and $20,000, which I think the last time they went was more than $30,000 range. So, I think that's it. Mr. Peck, do you have?
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Barnwell. I would like to add that, I mean, I'm not a travel agency, but I was thinking that it would make the most sense for the 5 people who are confirmed to be going to really set their agenda in stone, and that way, you know, before we open it up to the public, so they know what they're signing up for and know what the dates are. And like Councilmember Barnwell was saying, there's been some shuffling around on the Chrysanthemum Festival dates, and they're leaning towards it might be in the first week of November. So that would just be one thing I'd really want to get dialed in as to what exactly your travel dates are going to be. And then also your itinerary while traveling, like if you wanted to stay in Tokyo 1 or 2 days upon arrival. As you can see from the screenshot of the Google map, it's pretty far away from Obihiro, so that might be your only chance to see Tokyo as we fly in. So just those types of details I would like to get ironed out before we open it up to the public to apply for going along with the delegation.
So you guys will be talking with...
Yeah, we're a big group now, and we talk a lot.
Okay, yes, Councilman.
I have a question regarding flights. So if the city clerk can expand upon that, how do you book the flights? How do you judge how much you're going to spend on a flight? And does a council member have the opportunity to pitch in additional funds for a different seat on the plane?
Well, I don't know that...
So, Madam Mayor, may I touch on that? So, while back I flew to the East Coast for work, and I had a knee issue, and city bought my regular seat, and then I called the airlines, gave them my itinerary, and I paid for the upgrade myself, so I can sit in the bigger seat. So that could be done.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, that's a perfect answer.
That helps.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else?
I just want to point out that I probably would have a problem if you sat in first class.
Well, you didn't have a problem.
Okay, then you guys can work that out in that long, long flight over.
Yeah.
Anything else on that subject?
Nope.
Okay, thank you, and thank you to the committee, because I understand they've spent hours and hours and hours on this, way more than they expected.
Japanese are very thorough.
So you do appreciate it. Okay, the final thing is a summary of the Sewer and Electric Utility Ad Hoc Committee meeting held on July 17th. And their notes are on page 309. I do recommend watching the YouTube. I did. And they came up with a whole lot of stuff. I believe, Linda Paquette wrote this. And there were some requests for documents, if you look on page 309 to 310. Most of these questions would be answered by administration, I believe. But one thing that they asked is, first of all, they'd like Mr. Montgomery to attend the meetings, and I don't know if that's a thing that we decide or...
Yes, ma'am, that will happen.
Okay, because we weren't sure about that. And then they are hoping, I hope we're all looking at the same thing here, they're hoping to modify the mission statement. And they've made some changes to that, which sounds reasonable to me. I don't know, does anyone have an objection to them changing the wording? Councilmember Wells.
Well, my concerns with A, right off the bat, to research and compile the cost of operating. I feel like that's all we've been doing with this utility is operating it. And we know that there's a lot of items that need, a lot of purchases and a lot of upgrades and a lot of updates that need to be done. And so are we asking ad hoc to tell us how to just keep a Band-Aid on it and keep it operating? Or are we asking them to take Mr. Montgomery's suggestions as far as equipment replacement and upgrades and adding that to the cost? So that's why I like the rebuilding term over the term operating.
Anybody else? Could we say, well, Vice Mayor?
I was just gonna ask, was it originally operating and rebuilding, or, I mean, I don't know what the original version was.
No,
Rebuilding.
I think
It was just originally rebuilding?
Could we say both? Or, I mean, I don't know. It's a point. There's definitely a difference.
Mayor?
Yes.
Thank you. Could we ask Director Montgomery what he thinks about that? May we?
Oh, sure.
Thank you. Councilmember Wells. Yeah, it was originally rebuilding. I think that for the utility, it needs to be rebuilt for us to go to the future. That's the key point for the ad hoc committee. So.
Councilmember Wells.
Thank you. Just a follow-up question for Mr. Montgomery. How many years' experience do you have in this industry again?
Nearly 25.
Nearly 25 years. Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilmember DeMoss.
I think it covers, I like how it is. I like how we gave it to them. I think that, you know, the beginning rebuilding, I think is appropriate. I want to know what it's going to cost to bring it up to par.
I think a key is changing the mindset. If we do not, say, if the vote doesn't go through in October, and we have to rebuild the complete mindset of the council and the city, the community and the utility, we have to change. We cannot continue to operate with the limited resources and expertise. I'll be the first to admit, on the operations side of our business, I think we're staffed pretty well. We probably could use one lineman. On the business side, we're way short, okay? We need more resources. A reality that we have today is we have an operations supervisor's position, correct? But we can't build the utility from within as we are set today. The reason is because I do not have a single lineman or plant operator or field engineer that will apply for that job or even my job. The reason being is they'll have to take a big pay cut. If we don't start doing things differently, if we don't start paying industry competitive wages that are paid in the state of Alaska, we will have a difficult time filling those jobs, say if this is the path we go down, with qualified people. And we may not even get them filled for some long period of time. We simply, we don't pay enough to be competitive, and I cannot even get our existing employees to consider one of these other roles, because why would they? They're going to get paid much less if they do.
Okay. Vice Mayor Osenka.
Yeah, and in the next line down, removing the word expanded before staffing, I think that expanded staffing is the point. It's not just that they're going to figure it out for themselves. The point was, these were the recommendations. This is what was recommended that we should have to operate in our future. What's that going to cost? And I thought that's what we were looking for, not they were going to figure it out.
That is correct.
What staffing was supposed to be, but that this is what was recommended, and that. So I would think expanded should still be. I mean, again, it's not changing.
Yeah, and I believe there are certain things with the proposed org chart that could be looked at. You know, I have listed there a cybersecurity technology position. It's on there because we have to be aware that we need to do something. Whether we fill it with a full-time person or we contract it out, something has to be done. I have a notebook on the table. That is the result. Those are the cybersecurity and the reliability requirements that are coming. That is directly from Senate Bill 123, which established the Rail Belt Reliability Council to build an electric reliability organization to oversee the transmission and reliability in Alaska. So that blue notebook on the table, you know, is that thick. Not all of the mandates will apply to sewer because some things we just don't have, but most of them will. So these are real issues and real things that we have to deal with, and they're coming soon.
Councilmember Wells.
Thank you, Mayor. I see at the bottom it says, we're concerned about the apparent instance on additional staffing. It seems like a forged conclusion. We want to come to it ourselves. But it seems to me that the person with 25 years experience in this industry, who is the one who is dealing with this on a regular basis, it seems to me that Mr. Montgomery's suggestions on upgrades, on rebuilding, and required staffing isn't a conclusion that ad hoc committee is going to come to on their own, because they don't have that experience and understanding, such as the blue notebook that's over there on your desk right now.
Right. And I will share that with them at the next meeting as well. But, you know, to speak frankly, you know, you heard me talk about the operations. I think we are staffed pretty close to where we should be. I do think we need one more lineman. Our line foreman, Brian Thrall, agrees with me on that point. It's the other side of the business. Right now we rely on basically one, sometimes two people to do all of the other things. This includes the engagement at the state level with the other rail belt utilities and the different committees and boards that I serve on, and that keep Seward a seat at the table. It also includes trying to keep track of all state and federal legislation that could impact Seward and the state of Alaska. This is also handling all of the council interactions and the drafting of the resolutions and agenda statements. There are a number of things, customer relations and customer complaint resolution, all that works basically through me. You know, we need some help. Somebody in my role can easily burn out, and we need those additional resources. This is just a fact of what we do. So we do need to look at how do we pay more, how do we attract qualified people, and then how can we keep them. And that's an issue that's not going to go away unless we do things differently.
So I'm getting the sense that you don't want to change the wording of the deliverables. Is that the case? Councilmember DeMoss?
I mean, looking through it, I don't want to change any of it. We all accepted the mission agreement, or the mission statement. Everybody applied for it, knowing what the mission statement was, and I would like to just get on with it. So that's where I'm at.
Okay. Any other comments? Agreed?
I can agree.
Okay, well, I'll agree then, I guess. I guess we don't want to change the mission statement. Okay. I do want to emphasize that it's a really interesting group of people. You should watch the meetings. It was sort of indicated to me, I was going to come, and there was a thought that maybe the city shouldn't be so present at these, just to let you guys do your thing. But now you're wanting Rob Montgomery there, so, and it is open to the public, so I'll probably start checking in on these things. Yes?
And Madam Mayor, so they also put in there, has some questions and stuff like that. We'll get Rob to answer these questions for him, and we'll email it out to the ad hoc committee. As long as it doesn't, like the cybersecurity, I don't know what he can let out or what he can't. So, but he will answer the questions. We'll get him emailed to the ad hoc committee as soon as we can.
Okay, and just for the public, if you didn't know, they've agreed to meet every Monday when there's no council meetings at 7 p.m. and they're only going to meet for 2 hours at a shot. Is that correct? Yes. So they have an ending point before we do, which is very, very good planning. Don't let them change. Don't let the rest of them change that. Yes.
I don't know if this is appropriate to say it now, but I do. Maybe I just need to attend a meeting, talk with you guys, or listen to you guys, really. But we all know that the state of Alaska is running, well, not the state of Alaska, but South Central is running out of natural gas. And I would like to see how do we survive, or what are these small utilities like us? How do we operate in that realm? What's Chugach's plan? What is Homer's plan? Or I guess Chugach's plan, if we're going to continue buying power from Chugach. What is their plan for getting gas? Or, and that, I think it's critical to our survival, is understanding whether or not Chugach and or Homer have viable plans going forward.
That's not exactly what the mission statement
I know,
is,
but it kind of, it does fit a little bit.
Well, maybe we could
because-
just directly ask them.
Because that, we're dependent on Chugach.
Yeah, I hear you.
You know?
Councilmember Wells.
So to Councilmember Barnwell, during the original bidding process, right, those questions did come up, and unfortunately, you weren't there. I wish you would have been there. Those questions did come up, and they were both answered, and I can state with full smile that HEA answered that question in a more positive financial matter than Chugach did. And so I know that those administration or Mr. Montgomery can get that information directly for you. And I think it is important for the add that information to the, not to the ad hoc committee, but to the community. But we have heard those answers.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? Well, thank you to the committee, and we'll hear from you a lot, I know. So. Okay, that brings us to citizen comments. This is the 5-minute period where you can talk about anything you want for 5 minutes, and there's no sign up. All you gotta do is raise your hand and I'll call you up. So, who wants to go first? Come on. And you still need to say your name and all that, just because it goes in the record. And people listening and seeing who you are. And there's a different chair now.
There is a different chair. I do miss standing. It is hard to get in and out of the chair. My name is Christiana Smith, and I reside outside of Seward city limits. I wanted to thank Ms. Nickel from Human Resources to come up and kind of give a little bit of background onto the policy. I'm still concerned that the policy as it's written right now versus what Ms. Nichols said does not necessarily align. As the policy is written, it seems like the decision is made by the supervisor or the department head, and that then and whether or not an employee can work from home on occasion. Again, occasion is not specified, so what one supervisor or department head deems occasional might be once a week, where another department head might deem occasional once a month. As well as it then in the policy states that the supervisor will be the one to ensure that the policy is being followed. Being a citizen of the community, I have seen children in the workplace in the city, and I'm not necessarily against the policy, but I am concerned with how the policy is written and how it might affect the perception of employees being treated differently based on who their supervisor or department head is. I'm happy to hear from a city employee having a positive experience of being in, having a loss of childcare and being able to work with their department head, but I'm not sure that that will be seen across the board as the policy is written. So those are my concerns still with the policy itself. When I mentioned family-friendly work policies, that doesn't necessarily mean children belong in the workplace. It just means providing alternatives that does not stress parents, their employers, or even their children. There was an instance one time when my youngest was in childcare and was sick, and I was not able to take the full day off. My husband at the time was not able to take the full day off, and neither was my mother, who I'm lucky to have in town, was not able to take the full day off. We each took a couple hour slots to watch my sick daughter so that she could be cared for and that we could tend to the things we needed to at our job. So not only did that stress out one employer, that stressed out three, and that stressed out 3 employees. That's only happened on one occasion, and I'm very thankful for that, but I'm sure that there's families where that arises several times. There were some things that were said during the discussion relating to the lack of things that Hyper has not fulfilled or done. There was an article in the most recent Seward Journal that did highlight some of the things that the Hyper organization has done in the community of Seward, which they have increased positions that are licensed childcare. They assisted the Sprouts preschool program, which was a co-op, is now a licensed childcare that offers part-time slots for up to 20 children. They have also assisted home-based licensed childcare go from 8 positions to 12 positions. And in the article, it states that they are also currently talking to other possible providers and helping them get through the process. If you haven't read the journal article, I recommend you look it up and read what they have done, what they're currently doing, and what they're going to be doing, and call them up. And also, a couple years ago, I know that Hyper came forward to city admin. They presented at PACAB, they presented at city council, giving the idea of working together to partner with developing like a child care center that may have been able to be utilized by city employees, and that was kind of discarded as not an idea that they wanted to be on board with. If the members of city council and city administration have another idea now, they would probably be happy to hear from you.
Thank you. So who else wants to speak? Okay, Kevin.
Kevin Dunham, outside the city limits, and I have 43 years of experience in the power system. And a couple things that I'd like to say is that Seward has had a power system for over 100 years. They've had times in the past when they've had serious problems. They've overcome them. I don't think that this power system is falling down in any way. The money that's being siphoned off to use in other places could easily make this Seward electric system run in a positive way and still make money that could be funneled off. Two, Seward didn't get connected to the grid until Chugach Electric built the Cooper Lake Power Plant and a transmission line to Anchorage. And then Seward built the transmission line to Dave's Creek to connect into that line. At that time, Seward was able to shut down their diesel generators and save a hell of a lot of money. Chugach has always been pretty much a good player, and I think it's disingenuous is the best word I can come up with right now to say that they were liars or anything like that, or misrepresented themselves. Maybe, just maybe, they had a lack of communications and they didn't present themselves right. There is no way Homer is going to be able, in the long term, to give us better rates. They need to be back on the ballot. All of us are going to pay more for our electricity with Homer than we would with Chugach. I guarantee it. Chugach has gas. The gas fields are still there. They have to go do some more drilling to tap into Cook Inlet and the Kenai reserves. The other thing, back in the 80s when they came up with a supermajority, I am positive that my father had something to do with that. And he had a reason for it, and that was because there was a push to sell the utility, divest the city of the utility back then too. And he wanted to make sure, and the other city fathers and mothers, that it wasn't done lightly. I'm sorry that I get upset, but I'm not a good public speaker, but I think my dad would be rolling over in his grave now to see that you came up with this plan to reduce the supermajority at the same time to put it back on the ballot so that Homer could get a slam dunk. I think Chugach deserves to be back on that with the rates shown right up front. A loaf of bread costs $5 now, okay? Rates are going up. If we do our rate study, you're gonna see there's gonna be 15%, 15%, 10%, year after year to make it whole. That's just the way it is, okay? I am sorry, but Homer is also going to have to raise their rates. They're gonna have to, everybody does. If Seward stays on its own, you're gonna have to raise your rates. Yeah, I can't put it any simpler than that, and after that many years in the utility business, I mean, I've worked in wholesale power for many, many, many years, and I know how it works. Chugach's still gonna own the line that's gonna feed to Seward. The Dave's Creek to, no matter which direction Homer tries to sell you power, they have to go through Chugach's line. You gotta pay them around $10 a megawatt, which at Seward's load of 10 megawatts is 10 megawatts an hour times 24 times 365 forever. So if you want to sell to Homer, or the people do, go for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Who else wants to speak?
Laura Schneider, Inside City Limits. First, I would just like to say thank you, and that I appreciate each of you council members, the clerk's office, and administration. I know how hard you all work, and I really appreciate the ability to be part of this process. I love the public process, and so it was great to hear from all of you on why you voted the way that you did. And I would like to clarify that when I say I was disappointed in the process, I'm not making accusations that the process was illegal or that it was even improper. But hindsight being 2020, I would like to invite us to look at this as a lesson learned. You know, who I'm really upset with is actually Chugach and the way that they said they wanted their bid to be secret and then came out with it later when it didn't go their way. So the end result was the same, where we saw both of these proposals, but in a way that was so muddied that I think it affected the final vote. Again, I think that if the public had known the votes from or had known the bids from the beginning and had seen what council saw, because I've heard repeatedly that HEA made a very, very good presentation to council and they made their case, but the citizens did not get to see that. And so, as the lawyer pointed out, while they asked for them to be done in secret, that we can choose not to do that in the future. And that maybe in the future they're required to submit their sealed bids and then they give their presentations. Those bids have already been submitted, so now as the first utility is giving their presentation, it's not like the other one can come behind them and say, actually, we want to add to our proposal of seeing what they've said. But since you voted to put it back on the ballot, I have a couple of requests. I would like to see a rate comparison over the next 10 years of what it would be for us to continue running as the utility, which is some of the work of the ad hoc committee. So thank you for providing Mr. Montgomery as a resource for them, and I hope that they'll get as much support as they need to get that work done before that election, so that the ratepayers can see what direction we're going and how much we're going to be paying versus what our rates are going to be with HEA over the next decade. I would also encourage you to take head on the question of how HEA's revised bid, when they came back and they made their offer better, how those numbers were so in line with Chugach Electric's original bid. Again, I am not accusing anyone of impropriety, but it's a question that I've heard from a lot of people. And as you know, in the public sphere, perception is reality. And so people are saying, how did they know to bring their numbers up to exactly the level of where Chugach Electric's were? And so I'd like to hear that. How did those conversations happen? So I'm interested in how those numbers got to be the same, because I agree that when they came back, it sure looked a lot better than their original offer. So again, thank you. I guess we get the opportunity to vote on both of these issues in October, and I hope that the information that is put out in the meantime helps us all to make a more informed decision.
Who else wants to speak?
Daryl Schaefer, Ryerson City. Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. I would like to just offer this, that one of the problems I had with the sale was the very question of why was it necessary to sell the utility. That was never properly vetted or discussed, at least in the public forum. That didn't happen. I asked repeatedly what drove the engine that said we had to do that. Because I look at it in a little bit different perspective. This is an enterprise fund of the city. It belongs to the city. Enterprise funds are more than just operating a utility. It provides a revenue source to help keep our taxes down. And it has done admirably so over all the years that Seward has had an electric fund. It has done well. You wouldn't have a Seward Marine Industrial Center over there operating today if it weren't for the help from the electric fund. Think about that. You wouldn't have a lot of sewer projects done over the years if it weren't for the electric fund. Because you had that fund available and you had surpluses in that fund that allowed that to be used without having to raise the taxes to some of the numbers that were being talked about today for the Public Works building. That's kept property taxes down. Now, think about that. You have a duty to the shareholders of this corporation to look at that. Over the last 10 years, the electric fund has contributed $20 million to the bottom line of the general fund of the city. That is money that has kept your taxes down. So I want you to look the public in the eye when you explain why you voted the way you did, how you're going to make up the difference in the loss of that revenue. You're going to have to raise taxes or you're going to have to cut services. That's a lot of money. The proposal from Homer Electric only backfilled that maybe 40% of that money. You're going to have a budget gap. So the benefits of the electric or the enterprise fund are going to go away. You've given that up. You've given that up. You've sold out to Homer Electric. The other problem I have is this rate study that we're in the middle of right now. You committed. This is not what Homer originally proposed. They proposed they were going to keep rates where they were for the citizens of Seward for 3 years. That was their deal. That was their proposal. Only after that, after you selected them, did the contract get written. Oh no, you, Seward, you've got to do a rate study and then give us the benefit of those revenues starting January 1 of next year. That's what you're going to do with what you voted on tonight. That money's not going to stay here inside our city. It's going to go over to Central Peninsula and Homer. How dare that happen? Should not happen. Think about who you represent. It's not just, you're being very cavalier with this whole decision. With all due respect, council members who supported this, you were pretty cavalier with this decision. You didn't do your homework. The contract that was negotiated is flawed. There's nowhere in that contract that I can find, and I asked your utility manager where it was, that they're going to commit to keeping the standby plant. It's not in there. I want those kind of things in there and pledged to over the long-term agreement. It's not there. You need to spend time looking at that 350-page monster document to know what you're buying or what you're selling, what you're getting. Because I can tell you, you're not getting what you think you're getting. Right now, Homer's rates are the highest in the rail belt. They are going to continue to be so. I can guarantee you that. Their rates, so you sold out to the highest rate utility in the rail belt. That's not doing this community any service. You need to really spend some time letting the public in real town hall meetings, and not those sham things that you allowed Homer Electric to do, where everybody can get together and listen to what everybody has to say, have free dialogue,
put you guys on the spot where you have to explain why you did what you did. Don't let Homer Electric shame on you by saying that you had to do this behind closed doors. You didn't. You wrote the RFP, not Homer, not Chugach. You could have required, you said right up front, these will be public disclosed. Think about that.
Thank you, Darrell. Who wants to speak next?
My name's Jason Everson. I live in Cuesta Woods. I'm speaking as a ratepayer tonight. I'd like to thank Rob for his comments tonight. Appreciate what he said about why people do not want to step up to take the other positions, and he's spot on with that, especially with what's going on here tonight. But I agree 100% with what Mr. Dunham said. I also appreciate the couple council members that actually listened to their constituents tonight in the crowd. I'd also like to address the comments by some certain council members about the utility falling apart or it's being held together by a Band-Aid. Those are complete mistruths. It makes no sense. Nothing's held together by a Band-Aid. The utility's running fine. There's no outages. The trees are trimmed. The substation's being rebuilt. The high line's being rebuilt. There's no Band-Aid. Everything's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? I'll get Linda and then Randy, okay? Sorry. She's quicker with that.
Linda Paquette, outside city limits. Couple of things. I like this chair better. In talking about childcare, it just occurred to me when Christiana was talking that maybe there would be a way that the city could form some kind of a co-op with other large employers. So the city's not the only employer that's got problems with employees that have children and there's no childcare. But maybe the large employers together could fund a childcare facility. Just thought I'd throw that out there. I don't know who has to run with that ball, but in terms of the notes from the meeting, I think if Rob had been at that meeting, we could have clarified the mission statement stuff, so I apologize for wasting our time with that. I think one of the things that may not be really obvious, but the issue of the pay rate for the people in the electrical department. We're kind of looking at a house of cards. I just want you guys to be prepared. Because if we come back and we say, well, the going rate for these positions is this, and all of a sudden you have all these electrical people making all kinds of more money than anybody else in the city, now you've got a disparity that you would also have to somehow balance out. So I'm just giving you a little heads up that that's like a looming thing that we're going to have to deal with. You said the questions would get answered, but nobody said what would happen about that long list of documents that we asked for. So I just want to verify that admin will be piling us on with paperwork. And you know, I want to just thank all of you. These are not easy things, and I love that we're all here in service, and I think that that's really worth saying thank you to and appreciating everybody who's here, the clerk's office, administration, and all of you. And so I look forward to this committee. I think Rob being there will be a big help, and we can be very productive with that guidance. But without him in the room, I think we spent a lot of time spinning our wheels, and I think that we can avoid that now with the commitment that you've made that he'll be there. I think there was something else, but I can't remember now. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Randy?
Okay.
Randy Stauffer, outside of the city limits. Most of what I was going to say has probably already been said by other people. One of the first things I asked when I signed up for the ad hoc committee was exactly what Darrell said a little bit ago. I said, what drove the decision to sell the utility? And nobody could answer me, and I haven't heard anybody answer that since. I've heard a lot of platitudes about the utility is falling apart, we have to do this, we have to do that, but I haven't seen any evidence, I haven't seen any studies, I haven't seen any comparisons. And to me, that's one of the first things that you have to look at if you're making a decision to sell off a city asset. As Darrell said, the city asset that has been supplying, I think, something in the neighborhood of $2 million a year to the city funds, other than the electrical department, which allows this city to do a lot of things that it wouldn't otherwise be able to do. And nobody seems to have looked at how you're going to replace that $2 million a year. Again, I'm repeating questions that Darrell had, but that's a problem for me. I was upset that nobody could ask me, just for informational, if I'm going to be on a committee and we're going to come up with some proposals, it's like, first question is, why was this committee even formed? You have a mission statement that basically says that we've been given some new organizational charts and new positions and go figure out what all these cost. And then you put a measure on the ballot to say we're going to let the people vote on whether or not they want to sell the utility. And if they say yes, they're going to sell it, what was all of our work for? And I've heard that, well, we're going to need this information even if we sell it. And my question is, why? Maybe, you're expecting the transition to take 2 or 3 or 4 years or something, I don't know. But if the people vote in October to sell the utility, then everything, the deliverables that we've been given to deliver from the ad hoc committee mean absolutely nothing. It's like, close the book, go home. So I'm very, very confused. I don't understand what that is all about. Again, you all have done a lot of work and you've had to make tough decisions, and I understand that. I have been in public service myself, and I know how hard some of those decisions are. But as Darrell said, you guys wrote the request for quotations. You say that you were just following what you were told to do. Well, you're the ones that wrote what you needed to do. You didn't have to go along with the request to keep the bids secret, and it's been said that there were other ways to do all that. So again, it comes down to perceptions, and the perception as a ratepayer. And I don't have any dog in this fight because I live outside the city limits. So I'm going to pay whatever the rate's going to be, whether it's the sewer utility or Homer Electric, or if somebody, the ABC company buys it, whatever they say the rate is, that's the rate I'm going to have to pay, and I don't have any say about it. Other than I am a citizen of this community, and I think we need to do the best thing for this community. And my question as a ratepayer, are we doing the right thing for this community? And I guess that's all I'll say at this point. Thanks.
Thank you, Randy. Is there anyone else wishing to speak?
Mayor. Rob Montgomery, inside city limits. I wanted to just follow up briefly on what Jason Everson said. I agree. Our utility's not falling apart, okay? We've done a lot of really good things over the last 2.5 years. We've cut our power outages by nearly 75% in the past 2 years by cleaning up the right-of-ways. We are rebuilding the infrastructure on Nash Road. If you haven't had a chance to drive out and see it, pretty remarkable. That was falling apart. Stuff should have been replaced many years ago and it had not. But all of these things that you've heard us talk about cost. There's a cost associated with it. Ultimately, those costs are going to find their way back into the rates. So this is where I have a big concern. I have a big concern for our community when it comes to rates because we have 2,900 meters. We're not growing. You know, there's a chance we may get cruise ship power at some point, but it's certainly not a guarantee at this time. So we can't plan our system around what might be, right? We have to plan around the reality of what we have. And with the 2,900 meters and the money we're spending to catch up on our maintenance and to, you know, if we look to bring in qualified people, we're going to be spending more. And that's going to impact the rates directly. Being a small utility, you heard somebody say earlier, the bigger utilities, they can spread their cost and they have more meters for bringing in that revenue. We don't have that luxury here. So a big concern of mine. Along with that is when you're in my chair, you have decisions to make. Do I make those repairs and spend the money knowing it's going to impact rates, which isn't a popular thing to do, or do I sit here and do nothing? And I think that's where we were before, you know, I came into the office 2.5 years ago. And one of my fears is that we backslide. This utility in years ahead, if you're not investing regularly into your maintenance, if you're not investing in your technology that we're way behind on, then you're going to continue to fall behind and you're going to be back in the same type of situation in 15, 20, 30 years down the road. So these are real issues, and these are real issues that we need to address. And I presented a few weeks back what those options are. There were two that make the most sense. Either you try to sell it again and merge with a larger utility, or you try to rebuild it yourself. That is a true option. But you can't sit here and do nothing. There is an impact to the rates. We're going to see that when we finish our rate study. We're going to look at it from two perspectives. If we do nothing, here's what it will be. And if we rebuild based on the org chart that I had presented to the ad hoc committee and to the council, this is what we're looking at. Those are going to be real numbers as well. Regardless of whether we rebuild or not, we will be having a rate increase, probably no later than October of this year, maybe September. It's going to be real numbers. I hope to get the preliminary report later this week. So maybe in a future meeting, we can have that on the agenda. But I'll work with admin on that. But we've done a lot of good things. We're fixing the system, but there's a cost to that. And that cost ultimately is going to find its way back to the ratepayers because you have no choice. Okay. Thank you.
Skip Ryerson inside City Limits. First of all, I want to see a smile off my council, please. Let's get a little levity back in the room. You've had a little tough few minutes here. I want to thank you for your service, all of you. Sometimes it's a thankless job. And I maybe have an apology to you to make. I had a decision to make about a year ago whether to join council or assume that I could make a difference being on the outside, doing the work that I do, after 30 years of experience in finance, in mergers and acquisitions, to help our community. I made the wrong choice. I should have been up there with you, helping you out. I've tried to exhibit that by the comments that I've made to you over the last 2 years. Every time I've come to this dais, I've been respectful. I've spoken the facts. Numbers don't lie. You should know that from me by now. We own the utility. We the public. You're part of us. We're all a community. We own the utility. So we could do whatever we damn well choose to do when we want to sell this utility. We didn't have to oblige the solicitors to keep their presentations private. We could have made those conditions as part of our RFP, and we could have negotiated those. Presenting that even after you went out and negotiated for a second bite at the apple and got the best and final from both organizations, I think would have been appropriate to bring those offers to the community at that point. At that point, there was no more confidentiality left. You got what you can get out of them, and you bring that information forward to the community. After the presentation in public to the community, as I mentioned earlier, a couple of work sessions might have been just fantastic. We renewed one tonight. Look at how that turned out. I thought it was pretty successful. Thank you for your time. If you recall, and as I mentioned, my background, what it was in, deals of this nature, when I put them together, you don't get them done in 3-4 months. If you recall, when we first came to this conclusion to put this on a timeline, council was looking, based on recommendations from outside, was to bring this to a vote in April. I was pleading with you to at least make it till May till the snowbirds came back to town. I thought there'd be a higher turnout for voters, but I probably was wrong there. But in this type of a deal, it was calmer for me to take 8 to 9 months, especially when you're looking at something over a holiday time. HEA lost alignment in a collision over there when you were first starting your discussions in early December. That backwashed the schedule. Other things around holidays, I never basically did much around holidays. You just don't get much done. So looking at a timeline of 9 months, that would have put us into summer. That wouldn't have worked out for us. We would have had to go on to something in September. Again, no rush. It was ours to sell. You've heard much testimony here today about rates. I looked at this sale as in 2 components. One, the purchase price component, which brought you an investment that was going to give you a backfill in the general fund. Then there was the rates. I don't think I ever saw a rate comparison sheet. Homer versus Seward versus Chugach. Never saw that information. Maybe you could help me understand if I missed it somewhere along the way. I asked for a rate study. We are an unregulated utility. We have always raised our rates anytime we chose to do. We weren't regulated by RCA to do that. And we did that. We raised rates when we knew we had projects on the horizon so we could build the funds to do the projects. Mayor Sue could testify to that. So why we waited 2 years to decide to do a rate study when we passed a motion to do a $20 million project, which you were told we wouldn't need to do a rate increase by the bond banks. But what the bond bank, we didn't get told from the bond bank was that, no, you don't have to do a rate increase because we know you put $2 million in your general fund and we can always use that to pay your bond payments back. I can assure you this council would have had a different outcome for a vote at that time when you were faced with a $20 million investment, and a rate increase would have been probably demanded. Thank you for your time and have a good night.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak?
Alan Nickel, outside city limits. I just wanted to bring it back to the child care thing and say that I think you guys got it right. You know, as the chief of police here, I manage several divisions, and out of those divisions, none of them can have a child in the workplace. And I have an employee right now in one of the divisions with child care needs, you know, and under threat of losing that person, you know, I'm still not going to be able to allow a child in the workplace. So That said, you know, we've sort of embraced altering some schedules and finding ways to make it work. And I think that's really the answer. I thank Shannon Thorne for her comments. I think that figuring out some way to create a daycare is the answer. I would love to see something if the city had to get involved in it, where city employees would be able to get some sort of priority to get into that. But I mean, we've got so many things to fix. I don't even know how we're going to get to that. But yeah, sorry. But yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there. And but I really do. I think you guys got it right. And I'll tell you, you know, when I first came to this town 21 years ago, I moved down here. I was a jailer when I started, and I brought my oldest boy with me so that he could start school. And so he and I lived down here for months, and you know, I figured out how to do it. And we continue to have people who are figuring out how to do it. And so nothing's changed. So I would love to hear what caused you hesitation. You know, because I mean, I respect your opinion, and you know, you probably got some good ideas, and maybe there's something there that we could expand on in the future. So just want to throw that out there. Thank you.
I think we've heard from everyone in the room. Is there anyone else who wants to speak? Okay, so I'll bring it back to council and administration comments and responses to citizens' comments.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to thank everybody who made their comments tonight. It was a, you know, it's a pretty kind of intense meeting, but we worked through some things and made some, I think, some good changes coming, and Director Montgomery will be helping out the ad hoc committee, get their answers for them, and be at the meetings. So I just want to state that.
Thank you. And Mr. Sewell.
I don't have anything to add. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, I think I'll start with Councilmember Calhoun.
Well, I want to thank everybody's comments tonight. You know, it's an emotional issue for some people. It's a personal issue for some people. I don't take it personally, and I don't take it emotionally. I make decisions based on the best information I have and what I feel and what I think is best for the future of this community. I've lived here a long time. I plan to live here until I die. So that being said, just a couple of things. You know, people have talked about the $2 million that we've been getting. It hasn't always been $2 million, obviously. It's built up over the years with the rising costs of things. But we did vote to develop a fund to replace a good portion of that. Basically a sewer permanent fund, so to speak, with the proceeds of the sale, once that was all taken care of. So that would help replace quite a bit of that. We bonded $10 million. We did not vote to bond 20. Just so that people understand that we voted to bond 10 million for the infrastructure project. And part of the reason to have the ad hoc committee continuing is a time frame. And I'm not an expert in this. I'm going by what people have told me. But if we vote to sell, whenever that happens, if it happens, we're still going to own and operate and manage and repair and maintain this utility for 12 to 18 months is my understanding. If that's not correct, then I will, I'll take that information. Am I done?
Yep. That's it.
I didn't even know the timer was on.
And we always had a rate study planned with our rates going up prior to the 1st of January, regardless of what Homer Electric wanted. Our rates were going to increase anyway with that rate study. So I think I've said enough with everything else. Just thank everybody up here on this dais, administration, Rob, and all of our citizens for all of their comments. It's all welcome whether we agree or don't agree. We all still live here. We all still will get along to some degree. And hopefully, all of us still have the goal of making Seward the best place to live.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Barnwell.
Okay, well, to answer to Mr. Nichols' question, I made a mistake on the child care policy. I was thinking about the electrical issue and voted completely wrong. I think the council voted appropriately for the issue. I'd love to see a better answer for child care. I think there's some good ideas out there. It's a horrible problem that our country's dealing with. And I feel for parents this day and age. It was hard for me and my 3 girls, or Mary Lynn and I, and our 3 girls, but now I don't know how people do it. On to the electric, I really appreciate Mr. Montgomery's candid comments. I also think that the citizen comments were just super spot on. There's a lot of good stuff, and it is emotional. And as you can see, this is really complicated, and it's hard to see a way through this thing. This group, though, I can tell you, I came into the game late. They're not fooling around, and they've done their due diligence. And I get a little offended when people imply they haven't. They've been through the choice, which was a hard choice, Church's Homer, and then all of the negotiations. So I just want to commend them and defend them. I think they're a great group. We all are a great group, but I really think that decision, it is what it is. I also do think that Homer versus Chugach, from what I can't believe that the price would be that much different in the long run. But again, I know nothing. And I really look forward to the ad hoc committee. I hope you guys understand, like Councilmember Calhoun said, don't take it emotionally or personally. We're just trying to do the best we can. We really appreciate you guys getting your head around this and giving us some advice. And I just can't say that enough. So I hope this all works out. Thanks.
Okay. Councilmember Wells.
Well, I said a lot tonight already. But I thank all the citizens' comments and the dice and the administration, obviously. I look forward to the community getting their answers answered, because although some people keep saying, well, I never got this answer, I don't understand how that was possible, because we've given out the answers over and over and over again. And so I look forward to everybody having all the information that they need so that they can make a right decision. And part of that is the ad hoc committee, because that information is going to tell the voters what they are expecting, right? So we already knew that, and I apologize when I said the utility was falling apart. What I meant was the money that should have gone to maintaining and upgrading the utility and paying personnel what they should be paid, and the proper staffing hasn't happened, and instead that money has gone somewhere else, and therefore we have a huge expense coming up. And to me, that if you have that many repairs, that's falling apart. That's not maintenance. That is a serious problem. And when we look at the total expense that it's going to cost to bring it up to par, and the expense of additional employees, those were all the types of things that we took into account as far as the utility goes. And as far as the replacing that so-called $20 million, Councilmember Calhoun was correct. We did work really hard on figuring that out, and we did have an answer on that. And so I look forward to moving forward with this one way or the other. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Thomas.
Yeah, a couple of responses to citizens' comments. Skip, Ryerson, if you want to apply for the finance director, we've got that position open. There's going to be some seats open this fall. You can always go for it. And I appreciate what you said to us, but you can't be offended if we don't have time to analyze your financial reports, because we have to trust the information we're getting from the city and administration. I trust that you know what you're doing, but it's not inconceivable to think that we have the time to dig through your reports, and you can't be offended by that. So I appreciate you coming. I always appreciate what you have to say, but I've had to tell some people, can you not even email me? Can you break down your thoughts in a text? Because sometimes that's all I have time to read. So continue working with us, but also listen to us. In response to Daryl Schaefermeyer, super offended by his comments tonight. We've done our homework. We don't need to be ashamed of ourselves. That's a ridiculous thing to say, and I hope he can come back in a better light next time. And then also, I just want to remind people that, I hope that most people can treat our mayor with respect. She was on the end of some really, nasty words online and some bullying behavior, in my opinion. And so I think that no matter what's going on and no matter what we disagree on or agree on, that we need to stick up for each other, and that includes our elected officials and our mayor. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Osenga, you've been waiting all night for this.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thanks to everybody. Again, all the people that made comments, and we hear that. You say stuff, we hear it. It just doesn't go in one ear and out the other. For me personally, I don't think anybody up here ignores anything that's being made in public comment. So thank you to everyone who had the time to come down here and make their comments. I also wanted to say the ad hoc committee is an important thing, no matter what happens with this vote in October. There's information that we're going to need, and again, as Councilmember Calhoun stated, this isn't something that's going to happen this year, even if it's voted and approved. This is something that's going to be a year to 18 months down the road. So these are things that are, I think, important questions that I'm hoping that with all their resources and all the great minds that are on that committee, they'll be able to come back and give us this information. So I appreciate the people that stepped up and are on that ad hoc committee, and I also appreciate the committee that is dealing with the Obihiro trip. Thank you very much. There's a lot of planning going into that. I really was looking forward to being able to, but just by the time I figured out other plans that I had later on this next year, I just wasn't able to do it. So I feel really bad about not being able to go. I really, really wished I did. I did go to Obihiro in high school for our band, and it was the most amazing country that I've been to yet. It was so neat and so different, and it was just an amazing trip. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, this was some night. Thanks to the ad hoc committee. I was pretty excited about the group of people that are in it, and I just think you're going to come up with some really good suggestions and conclusions, and I'm really excited about that. And it hasn't been mentioned, but on the consent agenda, we approved Bruce Jaffa to be on PACAB again. You remember he was thinking maybe not, but he didn't mention that. But congratulations to him. I hope he got through the construction. I was going to read something about our description of what the mayor is in Seward, but I'm just going to point out that we don't have a strong mayor form of government. The mayor is presiding at the meetings. I'm supposed to cut ribbons and do these ceremonial things, and I'm just a vote. And so to call me a weak mayor is kind of offensive to that citizen who said that on Facebook, and I don't appreciate it. But I do appreciate the people that were here tonight that helped us make our decisions, and those were not easy decisions. And with that, I'll adjourn the meeting at 10:22.